Chapter 24:13. Fishing in troubled waters. Only by stirring up the waters would Xiao Chen and the others have a chance to escape. If they continued to stay in the Hetian mansion, they would be like catching a turtle in a jar. Therefore, Xiao Chen and the others had to leave the Hetian mansion. No matter which pocket dimension they entered, they would have a chance to escape. Fishing in troubled waters. Only by stirring up the waters would Xiao Chen and the others have a chance to escape. If they continued to stay in the Hetian mansion, they would be like catching a turtle in a jar. Therefore, Xiao Chen and the others had to leave the Hetian mansion. No matter which pocket dimension they entered, they would have a chance to escape. The speed of the spatial spirit boat was very fast. Not long after, Xiao Chen and the others arrived at the entrance to the unknown pocket dimension. Xiao Chen and the others naturally did not know much about this pocket dimension. After all, there were at least 8,000 pocket dimension entrances like this all over the Great Thousand World. However, this was nothing to Xiao Chen and the others. Without the slightest hesitation, Xiao Chen and the others drove the spatial spirit boat and directly rushed in. Not long after Xiao Chen and the others entered the pocket dimension, the evil spirits and the others also arrived in the spatial spirit boat. Looking at the entrance of the spatial passage in front of them, the evil spirits revealed a faint smile on their faces. Do you want to survive in a desperate situation? Unfortunately, Xiao Chen, your thinking is too simple. Do you think you can fight for a chance of survival after leaving the Hetian mansion? After saying that, the evil spirits and the others also drove the spatial spirit boat and directly rushed into the spatial passage. In the spatial passage, Xiao Chen did not have a good plan for the next step of the plan. After all, even Xiao Chen himself did not know the situation of the pocket dimension on the other side of the spatial passage. At this point, he could only take one step at a time. Anyway, no matter what, it was better than staying in the Hetian mansion. Within the pitch-black spatial tunnel, Xiao Chen and the evil spirits' spatial spirit boats were traveling at high speed, one in front and one behind. Both parties had raised the speed of their spatial spirit boats to the extreme. It did not take long for Xiao Chen's group to take the lead and charge out of the spatial tunnel. However, the expressions of Xiao Chen's group instantly turned ugly when they saw the scene in front of them from the deck. In other words, this minor thousand world was already under the control of the Evil Path's Starry Sky battleship. They didn't expect the situation at the other end of the space channel to be like this. Following the appearance of Xiao Chen and the others, many evil warriors flew out from the starship. They had obviously sensed the presence of Xiao Chen and the others. For a moment, everyone could not help but feel a sense of despair. However, at this moment, Xiao Chen made a prompt decision. Don't stop. Let's rush over first. With that, Xiao Chen took a step forward and flew out of the spatial spirit boat, blocking the evil warriors who were attacking them. The spatial spirit boat could not be damaged. Without the spatial spirit boat, with their own speed, they would not be able to escape from the evil path's pursuit. Therefore, Xiao Chen chose to ensure that the spatial spirit boat was not damaged. Seeing that Xiao Chen had taken action, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others followed suit. The others controlled the spatial spirit boat and flew away directly behind Xiao Chen and the others, preparing to break through the defense of the Evil Path's starship. Sensing that Xiao Chen and the others were martial artists from the Great Thousand World, the Evil Path's starship, who was in charge of guarding, naturally took action. However, with Xiao Chen's strength, as long as the Evil Honorable did not take action, the ordinary Evil Path's starship would not be a match for him. Like a sharp sword, Xiao Chen, with the cooperation of Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others, quickly tore a gap in the Evil Path's defensive line. The spatial spirit boat also successfully broke through with Xiao Chen and the others. There was no intention to continue fighting. After all, the goal of Xiao Chen and the others was to escape, not to annihilate the Evil Path's starship. After breaking through the Evil Path's starship, Xiao Chen and the others returned to the spatial spirit boat and disappeared into the starry sky. They were unable to stop Xiao Chen and the others. At the same time, not long after, the evil spirit's spatial spirit boat appeared in the spatial tunnel. In fact, the evil spirits had long known that this minor thousand world was completely controlled by the evil path's starship. Therefore, when they learned that Xiao Chen and the others had entered this minor thousand world, the evil spirits smiled and did not look too worried. Seeing that Xiao Chen and the others had successfully broken through the defensive line, the evil spirits were not surprised or annoyed at all. They had long known that these people would not be able to stop Xiao Chen. However, the evil spirits still had a cold smile on their faces. Xiao Chen, do you think that entering the Heaven Awakened realm will give you hope of escaping? You don't know that the Heaven Awakened realm is the same as the Heavenly Palace. The Heaven Awakened realm was the name of this minor thousand world, and it was also controlled by the evil path's starship. Moreover, all the factions in the Heaven Awakened realm that did not submit to the evil path had been killed, and the remaining people had all become members of the evil path. Within the Heaven Awakened realm, the evil spirits still did not believe that Xiao Chen had any chance of escaping. After speaking, the evil spirits took out a sound transmission talisman and contacted the various large factions in the Heaven Awakened realm to search for Xiao Chen and the others. At the same time, the Violet Snake and Chi Mei acted together and sealed the spatial tunnel leading to the Heaven Awakened realm. This meant that Xiao Chen and the others were completely trapped in the Heaven Awakened realm. Unless an emperor from the Great Thousand World came to save them, Xiao Chen and the others would not be able to leave the Heaven Awakened realm. After doing all of this, the evil spirits were filled with confidence. Xiao Chen would not be able to escape from them, and the Heaven Awakened realm would be where Xiao Chen would fall. As soon as the evil spirits acted, they had completely sealed off all paths of escape for Xiao Chen and the others. On the other side, no one knew that the Heaven Awakened realm had fallen into the hands of the evil path, and everyone's hearts were heavy. They had thought that they would have a chance of survival, but who would have thought that it would be a dead end? Within the spatial spirit boat, everyone's expressions were extremely unsightly, and they were even filled with despair. However, Xiao Chen still did not give up. Even though the situation was worse than he had expected, they had not fallen into the evil path's hands yet. As long as they had not fallen into the evil path's hands, Xiao Chen felt that there was still hope. As such, Xiao Chen's gaze swept over everyone as he spoke. When we received this mission, we knew that there was a slim chance of survival. Right now, we still have a chance of survival. Although this minor world has fallen into the evil path's control, at least we have not fallen into their hands yet. That way, we still have a chance to escape. Furthermore, even if we die in the end, I believe that I will die before you. However, until the final moment, we should not give up hope. Everyone was startled for a moment before looking at Xiao Chen and nodding. Even before the final moment, Xiao Chen's words gave everyone a glimmer of hope. Indeed, in this kind of situation, if everyone fell into despair, then there really would be no hope. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 24:14. The current situation was indeed very bad, but Xiao Chen still did not give up hope. Even if there was only a slim chance of survival, Xiao Chen would definitely give it a try. The current situation was indeed very bad, but Xiao Chen still did not give up hope. Even if there was only a slim chance of survival, Xiao Chen would definitely give it a try. With Xiao Chen's encouragement, everyone gradually calmed down, and then they began to discuss how to deal with the next situation. According to Xiao Chen's idea, the evil path had probably sealed off the space passage to this small world. Under such circumstances, it was obviously impossible for Xiao Chen and the others to escape from this small world. Moreover, the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World would probably not be able to come to their rescue in a short period of time. Therefore, the only thing Xiao Chen and the others could do now was to stall for time. After all, the evil spirits and the others could not stay in this small world forever, because the evil spirits and the others could not be absent from the main battlefield. Once the time was dragged on for too long, the evil path would inevitably be forced to call back the evil spirits and the others due to the pressure of the main battlefield. At that time, without the evil spirits and the others, the pressure on Xiao Chen and the others would naturally be reduced. At that time, even if they were to face an evil sovereign, Xiao Chen's strength would be enough to deal with him for a while. The evil path wanted to close the door and beat the dogs, while Xiao Chen and the others had to stall for time and do their best to deal with the evil spirits and the others in this small world. After hearing Xiao Chen's idea, everyone nodded in agreement. After all, this was the best and only way at the moment. After reaching an agreement, Xiao Chen and the others also dismissed the idea of returning to the space passage. According to Xiao Chen's guess, the space passage was probably completely sealed at this time. Even if they went back, there was no point. They directly flew into the depths of this small world. Next, Xiao Chen and the others would be entangled with the evil path in this small world. While Xiao Chen and the others made their decision, on the other side, after sealing the space passage, the evil spirits and the others directly left. They did not choose to stay because with Xiao Chen and the others' strength, there was no way for them to break through the purple snake in Chimei's seal. At the same time, the evil spirits had already sent messages to the various major forces in the Heaven Awaken world. In an instant, countless starships rose up from the various continents of the Heaven Awaken world and searched the endless starry sky for the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and the others. Within the Heaven Awaken world, no force dared to disobey the evil path's orders. After all, the Heaven Awaken world was not like the Great Thousand Worlds, and it did not have the strength to resist the evil path. Moreover, when the Heaven Awaken world had just taken control of the Heaven Awaken palace, the evil path had already invaded the Heaven Awaken world. After such a long time, the Heaven Awaken world was firmly controlled by the evil path. Once the evil spirits gave the order, all the cultivators in the Heaven Awaken world joined in the hunt for Xiao Chen and the others. On the spatial spirit ship, the evil spirits and the others did not move very quickly. After all, there was still no trace of Xiao Chen, and the evil spirits and the others did not have a direction. Evil spirits, we don't have much time. We need to kill Xiao Chen and the others as soon as possible, Violet Snake said to the evil spirits as the three of them sat together in a circle within the spatial spirit ship. Her expression was grave. Compared to Xiao Chen and the others, the evil spirits and the others were under a lot of pressure. After all, without the three of them on the main battlefield, the evil path would definitely be at a disadvantage. If this situation dragged on for too long, the main battlefield might collapse. The evil spirits naturally knew this, but hearing Violet Snake's words, the evil spirits smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll definitely find them within 3 days." The evil spirits were confident that they would find Xiao Chen and the others within 3 days and then kill them. Hearing evil spirits' words, Violet Snake nodded. They could afford to wait for 3 days, but if they still could not find Xiao Chen and the others in 3 days, they would have no choice but to return to the main battlefield. The evil spirits seemed incredibly confident, and this was indeed the case. The evil spirits had already set up an inescapable net, and this net was continuously shrinking. The evil spirits secretly contacted the sect masters of the various large factions in the Heaven Awaken world, and the evil spirits secretly gave them many orders. After receiving the orders from the evil spirits, these sect masters did not dare to disobey and resolutely carried out the orders. After floating through the starry sky for half a day, Xiao Chen and the others encountered their first encirclement. The ones who attacked were large sects from the Heaven Awaken world. They had received orders from the evil spirits to search for Xiao Chen and the others. They didn't expect to actually meet Xiao Chen and the others. The spatial spirit boat and the starship met. At this moment, on the starship, an old man with immortal emperor cultivation did not choose to attack immediately. Instead, when he saw Xiao Chen and the others' spatial spirit boat, he immediately ordered a retreat. At the same time, he contacted the evil spirits through a sound transmission talisman. He had no intention of fighting Xiao Chen and the others. However, seeing this, Xiao Chen did not hesitate to order, "Kill, don't leave anyone alive." Xiao Chen did not care about the identities of these people and directly ordered a massacre. In an instant, Li Ku, Wang Songxue, and the other End Realm experts directly attacked. Not long after, the starship was destroyed and everyone on it was killed. However, even if Xiao Chen's reaction was not good, the evil spirits had already received the news and confirmed the location of Xiao Chen and the others. The evil spirits instantly revealed a cold smile. "Xiao Chen, let's see where you can run now." After saying that, the evil spirits used several sound transmission talismans. Then, they drove the spatial spirit boat and rushed towards where Xiao Chen and the others were. In the end, the location of Xiao Chen and the others was exposed. Although the evil spirits and the others had not arrived yet, all the cultivators in the Heaven Awakened world had secretly surrounded the area where Xiao Chen and the others were. Things went smoother than the evil spirits had expected. As long as they knew Xiao Chen's approximate location, the evil spirits were confident that they could surround Xiao Chen and not give him any chance. In fact, in the next half a day, Xiao Chen and the others also realized that something was wrong. In just half a day, they had already encountered more than 10 starships. Although these starships were destroyed by Xiao Chen and the others and the cultivators on them were all killed, the sudden appearance of so many starships was extremely abnormal. One had to know that Xiao Chen and the others were currently in the Heaven Awakened world's starry sky. Moreover, they were far away from the continent. How could so many starships appear in such a starry sky? There was only one explanation, and that was that their location had been exposed. These starships had all come for them. Standing on the deck of the spatial spirit boat and watching Li Ko and the others destroy another starship, Xiao Chen did not show any joy on his face. On the contrary, he said with a heavy tone, "I'm afraid that we have already been surrounded." Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 24:15. I'm afraid we've been surrounded. Xiao Chen had a rough idea of what was going on after seeing more than 10 spaceships in half a day. I'm afraid we've been surrounded. Xiao Chen had a rough idea of what was going on after seeing more than 10 spaceships in half a day. Most likely, their whereabouts had been completely exposed when the first starship had appeared, and the phantasms had surrounded this area of the Starry River as soon as possible. The evil spirits definitely knew that these local cultivators of the Heaven Awakened world were no match for Xiao Chen's group. They didn't even need Xiao Chen to act personally. They only needed to send out an End Realm expert to easily destroy these spaceships and kill the cultivators on them. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Long Qing, Xian Yuan Ling, Gu Ling Yao, and the others all had serious expressions on their faces. We've been discovered so quickly? It had only been less than a day. If what Xiao Chen said was true, then wouldn't the situation become extremely dangerous? Actually, there were some things that Xiao Chen didn't say out loud. The current situation wasn't just dangerous. It was truly a situation where they had a slim chance of survival. The evil spirits were definitely prepared for Xiao Chen's group to break out of the encirclement. Therefore, they didn't immediately close the encirclement. As a result, no matter what Xiao Chen's group did, they would always be surrounded by the evil spirits. If they didn't think of a way to break out of the encirclement now, it would probably be too late when the evil spirits arrived. At that time, it would be even more difficult to break out of the encirclement. Not giving the order to immediately search the encirclement was like boiling a frog in warm water. They didn't directly force Xiao Chen's group into a dead end. Instead, they gave Xiao Chen's group the wrong impression that the situation wasn't too bad. But in reality, Xiao Chen's group was basically like fish on a chopping board. They were just waiting for the evil spirits to arrive and deal a fatal blow. Moreover, apart from these, the evil spirits definitely had other backup plans. With Xiao Chen's understanding of the evil spirits were very meticulous and would definitely be fully prepared. The situation would only be worse than expected. Moreover, it was probably getting harder and harder to break out of the encirclement because the cultivators of the Heaven Awakened world listened to the orders of the evil spirits and only surrounded them. The entire encirclement was moving along with Xiao Chen's group. In other words, no matter where Xiao Chen's group went, they would always be surrounded by the evil spirits. The evil spirits would also know where Xiao Chen's group was at all times. Thinking about it, the evil spirits should be arriving soon. Xiao Chen sighed helplessly. The evil spirits were truly a headache. Not only were they meticulous, but their methods were also shrewd and ruthless. In truth, Xiao Chen would rather face an evil sovereign than face the evil spirits. But there was no other way. Now, Xiao Chen had no choice but to face the evil spirits. Moreover, he was at an absolute disadvantage against the evil spirits. The situation on Xiao Chen's side could be said to be extremely dangerous. On the other side, after a day and night of resistance, the evil path's side gave up Leaping Tiger City. However, the evil path's side took the initiative to give up Leaping Tiger City, so their losses were not too great. On the other hand, the Great Thousand Worlds side finally obtained Leaping Tiger City as they wished. As a result, both Leaping Tiger City and Mausoleum City fell into the hands of the Great Thousand Worlds side. The situation seemed to be gradually tilting towards the Great Thousand Worlds side. However, even though they had succeeded in taking Leaping Tiger City, Junwuya and the other sovereigns were not too happy. This was because everyone was worried about Xiao Chen's situation. After taking Leaping Tiger City, the sovereigns arranged the defenses and came to the City Lord's Mansion's hall. They gathered together to discuss how to rescue Xiao Chen and the others. Xiao Chen and the others have entered the Heaven Awaken world? Luo Xing asked with a grave expression after hearing the latest news about Xiao Chen and the others. In response, Yin Litian also said in a deep voice, "The Heaven Awaken world is a small world within the Etian Mansion. I wonder what the situation inside is like. I know a little about the Heaven Awaken world situation. It's not complicated, but the only problem is that the entrance to the Heaven Awaken world is too close to the evil God Palace. I'm afraid that the Heaven Awaken world has already been controlled by the evil path. If that's really the case, then Xiao Chen and the others are in danger," Dao Xiong said. The Heaven Awaken world was just a small world, so it was naturally impossible for the sovereigns to pay attention to it. The only thing they were worried about was whether the Heaven Awaken world was controlled by the evil path. If it was, then it would be very dangerous for Xiao Chen and the others to escape into the Heaven Awaken world. At that time, as long as the evil path controlled the entrance to the Heaven Awaken world, they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Xiao Chen and the others would not even be able to escape. Hearing this, Junwuya indifferently said, "There's no need to doubt it. The Heaven Awaken world is definitely controlled by the evil path. Moreover, if my guess is correct, the spatial channel to the Heaven Awaken world has most likely been sealed. With Xiao Chen and the others' strength, they won't be able to open it." Junwuya's guess was correct. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. If that was really the case, then what should they do? Unless the sovereigns went to help, Xiao Chen and the others would have no chance of survival. However, although the evil path had given up on Leaping Tiger City, they did not retreat. Instead, they set up camp in a city not far from Leaping Tiger City. From the looks of it, they were planning to prevent the sovereigns from going to help. With Xia Tian and the others blocking the way, it was basically impossible for the sovereigns to go to the Heaven Awaken world to help. Moreover, Leaping Tiger City had just been captured. If they sent people to help, it was very likely that the evil path would counterattack. At that time, they would lose Leaping Tiger City and all their previous efforts would be wasted. Thinking of this, Dao Xiong angrily shouted, "This group of damned evil path cultivators, each and every one of them is extremely sinister." Dao Xiong angrily cursed. However, from a certain point of view, Xia Tian's choice was indeed the most correct. Now, the Great Thousand Worlds side was in the same situation as the evil path side. They had fallen into a difficult choice. On one hand, Xiao Chen and the others were in a desperate situation. If they did not save them, it was very likely that they would die. On the other hand, if they chose to save them, then Leaping Tiger City, which had an unstable foundation, would be lost again. Every dog has its day. The evil path's original feeling was perfectly reflected in the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World. This was also Xia Tian's doing. After learning that the evil god palace had been ambushed, Xia Tian made the most correct choice in the shortest time possible, causing the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World to fall into a dilemma. To save or not to save? To sacrifice Xiao Chen and the others and fight steadily and surely, or to take a wild gamble and save Xiao Chen and the others? For a time, the sovereigns' opinions were divided. Dao Xiong, Luo Xing, Li Chun, and the others were in favor of saving Xiao Chen. No matter what, they should not give up on Xiao Chen. However, on the other side, Yin Litian, Yun Chen, and the others thought that they should prioritize the overall situation. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 24:16. Within the city lord's mansion, Junwuya, Dao Xiong, Yin Litian, and the other sovereigns were arguing endlessly. Within the city lord's mansion, Junwuya, Dao Xiong, Yin Litian, and the other sovereigns were arguing endlessly. Bullshit! If it weren't for Xiao Chen's sacrifice, how could the current situation have occurred? If we don't save Xiao Chen, wouldn't the cultivators of the Great Thousand World be disappointed? Dao Xiong shouted angrily. Hearing Dao Xiong's words, Yin Litian was unwilling to be outdone. Yes, this king acknowledges Xiao Chen's sacrifice, but with the current situation, if we forcefully save him, what will happen to Leaping Tiger City? Are we going to hand over Leaping Tiger City, which we just obtained, to the evil path? Both sides had their own opinions, and neither side was willing to accept the other. As the two sides argued, Junwuya suddenly spoke from the main seat. Everyone, it's useless to continue arguing like this. I wonder if you can listen to this old man? Junwuya spoke slowly. Hearing this, everyone's gazes fell on Junwuya. Facing everyone's gazes, Junwuya said indifferently, the current situation is very complicated, and it's very difficult for us to save Xiao Chen. However, this old man believes that the best way to save Xiao Chen is to continuously exert pressure on the battlefield. Right now, the evil spirits, Zi Shi, and Qi Mei are chasing after Xiao Chen. Without the three of them, the evil path's strength on the battlefield is definitely inferior to ours. We can use pressure to force the evil spirits back. Dao Xiong, Luo Xing, and the others' eyes lit up when they heard Junwuya's words. They were overjoyed. Yes, this was a good idea. It was unrealistic to directly head to the Heaven Awakened realm to save Xiao Chen. Moreover, the evil path wouldn't let the sovereigns reach the Heaven Awakened realm so easily. Since that was the case, they would do the opposite. They would use pressure on the battlefield to force the evil spirits back. Just think about it, if they couldn't hold on the battlefield, would the evil spirits still have time to chase after Xiao Chen and the others? Obviously, it was impossible. Once they lost on the battlefield, the entire evil path would be in danger. Therefore, if the evil path really couldn't hold on in a head-on battle, Xia Ming and the other two would definitely retreat as soon as possible. At that time, without Xia Ming and the others, Xiao Chen and the others would naturally be safe. Secondly, Junwuya's method also guaranteed that Leaping Tiger City would be safe. It could be said that it was the best of both worlds. After hearing Junwuya's words, even Yin Litian and Yunchen had nothing to say. Indeed, this was the best way. Without much hesitation, Dao Xiong was the first to speak. Alright, Brother Wuya's idea is not bad. Next, we'll launch a fierce attack on the corrupt path. I refuse to believe that the three phantasms won't retreat. Dao Xiong agreed. Then, Yin Litian and Yunchen also nodded in agreement before the crowd's gazes. Increasing the pressure on the evil path and forcing the evil path to withdraw the three evil spirits was the only thing the sovereigns could do for Xiao Chen and the others. However, the sovereigns' plan still needed time to succeed. In other words, Xiao Chen and the others would have to rely on their own strength to hold on in the Heaven Awakened realm for a few more days. Only then would they be able to hold on until the three evil spirits retreated. However, the sovereigns clearly didn't know about the situation in the Heaven Awakened realm, nor did they know about Xiao Chen and the others' current predicament. In just one day, Xiao Chen and the others had already fallen into a tight encirclement. It would be extremely difficult for them to hold on for a few more days. Xiao Chen naturally didn't know about what the sovereigns were doing. At this moment, Xiao Chen and the others had dealt with the starship in front of them and were driving the spatial spirit boat in a different direction. Xiao Chen's current goal was very simple, to break out of the encirclement. Only by breaking out of the encirclement would they be able to continue dealing with the evil spirits. Once they were completely surrounded, there was nothing they could do. The spatial spirit boat's speed was pushed to the limit. Xiao Chen wanted to break out of the encirclement in one go. Seeing the grim expression on Xiao Chen's face, everyone knew how tense the situation was. Although the phantasms hadn't made a move yet, if this continued, they would be trapped like turtles in a jar. Third brother, it's not working. We're moving forward, but these bastards are also moving. We're still surrounded. The major forces of the Heaven Awakened realm were completely following the instructions of the evil spirits. They were only surrounding Xiao Chen and the others, not attacking. When Xiao Chen and the others moved, they also moved to ensure that Xiao Chen and the others were always surrounded. Hearing Xian Yuanling's words, Xiao Chen calmly said, "It's fine. The spatial spirit boat's speed is much faster than the star ships. I believe that it won't be long before we encounter the encirclement." Just as Xiao Chen finished speaking, Li Ku, who was on the deck, suddenly shouted, "Sect Master, I see it. I see the star ships." Hearing this, Xiao Chen and the others immediately went to the deck. Sure enough, from a distance, they could see dozens of star ships at the end of their line of sight. Obviously, this was where the encirclement was. Immediately, a cold light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes, and he coldly said, "Don't stop, charge." Since they had already seen the encirclement, the next step was to break out of the encirclement at all costs. They had to break out of the encirclement before the evil spirits arrived. After saying that, Xiao Chen jumped off the spatial spirit boat and directly attacked the star ships. Seeing this, Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, Li Ku, and the others naturally followed closely behind. Only Gu Lingyao and the other two women remained on the spatial spirit boat. They were responsible for controlling the spatial spirit boat. There were at least tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of cultivators on the dozens of star ships. However, Xiao Chen and the others didn't have to worry about this at all. None of the cultivators from the Heaven Awakened realm were very strong. So far, the strongest cultivator that Xiao Chen and the others had encountered was only at the Immortal Emperor realm. Under Xiao Chen's lead, the group quickly tore open a path. The major forces of the Heaven Awakened realm had no way of stopping Xiao Chen and the others. It could be said that it was very easy to break out of the encirclement. However, just as Xiao Chen and the others broke out of the encirclement, a spatial spirit boat rapidly flew over from afar. Xiao Chen, who had just returned to the deck, immediately saw the evil spirits standing on the deck of the spatial spirit boat. He immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Let's go." He didn't expect the evil spirits to arrive so quickly. However, now wasn't the time to be entangled with them. If there was only one evil spirit, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't be afraid. However, there were also two evil spirits, Purple Snake and Chi Mei, beside the evil spirits. Once they were entangled, Xiao Chen would only be able to deal with the evil spirits. Purple Snake, Chi Mei, Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the others wouldn't be able to stop them. Without any hesitation, the spatial spirit boat's speed instantly increased to the maximum. However, the evil spirits sneered, "Xiao Chen, it's already like this. Do you think you can still escape?" Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 24:17. Although Xiao Chen's group had successfully charged out of the encirclement, the evil spirits had also arrived. At this time, Xiao Chen chose to escape without any hesitation. Seeing this, the evil spirits naturally quickly chased after him. After finding Xiao Chen's location with great difficulty, the evil spirits naturally wouldn't give Xiao Chen any chance to escape. Moreover, Xia Tian's side had already sent a message saying that on the main battlefield, the large world side was constantly pressuring them. Without the three evil spirits, it was indeed hard for the evil path to resist. So, he hoped that the evil spirits could quickly take care of Xiao Chen's group and return to the main battlefield. The main battlefield was tense, so the evil spirits naturally wouldn't waste any time. So, a cold glow flashed in their eyes, looking like they wouldn't give up until they killed Xiao Chen. The two spatial spirit boats flew through the endless starry sky one after the other. Whether it was Xiao Chen or the evil spirits, they had already raised the speed of the spatial spirit boats to the limit. Flying the entire way, but seeing that they couldn't shake off the evil spirits, Xiao Chen's group became more and more serious. Xian Yuanling even said to Xiao Chen in a small voice, "Third brother, this won't do. We'll definitely be caught." Xian Yuanling could tell that if they didn't come up with a solution soon, Xiao Chen and the others wouldn't be able to shake off the phantasms and the others. If this went on, the phantasms and the others would definitely catch up to them. Hearing Xian Yuanling's words, Xiao Chen slightly knit his brows. He naturally understood this logic, but both sides had spatial spirit boats and the evil spirits were tightly biting onto him. Wanting to shake them off was easier said than done. They both had spatial spirit boats and there wasn't any difference in speed. Like this, how could they shake off the evil spirits? Get someone to stall for time? Of course, this was unrealistic. Although there were only 3 of them, they were all evil exalts. Even if Phantasm hadn't truly broken through to the evil exalts realm and was only a half-step evil exalts, his battle prowess was indeed not much different from that of an ordinary evil exalts. With such a lineup, even Xiao Chen would find it hard to delay them. No matter how strong Xiao Chen was or how confident he was, it was impossible for him to face 3 evil sovereigns at the same time. No one could do that. The situation seemed to have fallen into a dangerous situation. Xiao Chen and the others were faced with a dead end. Although the evil spirits had yet to catch up to them, it was only a matter of time before they caught up to them. Once the evil spirits blocked their path, Xiao Chen's group would most likely be doomed. With their current strength, it was simply impossible for them to contend against the power of 3 evil sovereigns. Xiao Chen frowned and kept thinking of a way to deal with the situation. However, in Xiao Chen's opinion, there was no better way now. They couldn't escape, and they couldn't beat them. Everything seemed to have fallen into a dead end. The 2 spatial spirit boats were still in the starry sky, moving quickly. They seemed to have forgotten about the time and had no direction to speak of. In the end, even Xiao Chen and the others didn't know where they were. They only wanted to increase their speed. It would be best if they could shake off the evil spirits and the others. However, the evil spirits didn't have the slightest intention of giving up. They were still closely following behind Xiao Chen and the others. Moreover, after such a long chase, the evil spirits and the others seemed to have closed the distance between them. Although this distance didn't seem to be much now, it was obvious that they would catch up in the long run. The evil spirits and the others' spatial spirit boats were faster than Xiao Chen's? This was clearly impossible. The only difference was in the people controlling the spatial spirit boats. On Xiao Chen's side, Xiao Chen was personally controlling the spatial spirit boat. On the other hand, the evil spirit's spatial spirit boat was controlled by Qi Mei, the evil sovereign. As a true evil sovereign, with her controlling the spatial spirit boat, its speed naturally reached its peak. As such, it wasn't difficult to understand why they were faster than Xiao Chen and the others. Just like that, the 2 sides chased and fled, quickly moving through the heaven-awakened realm's starry sky. As the distance between them grew closer and closer, the evil spirits on the deck found an opportunity and pointed a finger. A blood-red finger light shot towards Xiao Chen and the others' spatial spirit boats. The evil spirits wanted to destroy Xiao Chen and the others' spatial spirit boats and completely prevent Xiao Chen and the others from escaping. Facing the evil spirits' attack, Xiao Chen was stunned. He immediately said to Xian Yuanling and Long Qing, "Big brother, second sister, you 2 control the spatial spirit boats." Facing the evil spirit's attack, only Xiao Chen could block it. The others simply didn't have this ability. As such, without any hesitation, Xiao Chen directly handed control of the spatial spirit boats to Long Qing and Xian Yuanling. As for Xiao Chen, he stepped onto the deck and pointed a finger at the evil spirit's blood-red finger light. An azure finger light flashed, and the 2 fiercely collided. Xiao Chen acted in time, narrowly avoiding damage to the spatial spirit boats. However, because Xiao Chen was unable to continue controlling the spatial spirit boats, the spatial spirit boats' speed slowed down. The evil spirits had naturally guessed this. As such, when they saw Xiao Chen act in time and block their attack, not only were the evil spirits not angry at all, but a trace of a smile flashed through their eyes instead. Xiaochen, do you think you can escape like this? As they spoke, the evil spirits launched another attack. Seeing this, Xiaochen could only helplessly block it. Subsequently, the evil spirits continued to attack, and Xiaochen also continued to resist. For a moment, Xiaochen simply didn't have the chance to control the spatial spirit boats. The evil spirits wanted to delay Xiaochen and prevent Xiaochen from controlling the spatial spirit boats. Without Xiaochen controlling the spatial spirit boats, the spatial spirit boats' speed naturally couldn't be compared to before. As a result, the evil spirits naturally continued to close the distance between them. Little brother, this won't do. They're too fast. If this continues, they'll catch up sooner or later. Long Qing, who was controlling the spatial spirit boats, also discovered that the distance between the two parties was constantly closing. At this moment, he anxiously shouted at Xiaochen. Hearing Long Qing's words, Xiaochen actually already guessed the evil spirit's intention. He knew that the evil spirits were deliberately delaying him and not giving him a chance to control the spatial spirit boats. However, even if he knew this, Xiaochen couldn't do anything because if Xiaochen didn't attack, the evil spirits could directly attack the spatial spirit boats. Once the spatial spirit boats were damaged, everything would be over. Therefore, even if he understood everything, Xiaochen couldn't do anything. Hearing Long Qing's words, Xiaochen could only block the evil spirit's attacks while shouting in a deep voice. Don't worry about anything else. Just do your best. In the current situation, Long Qing and the others definitely couldn't do anything. He could only tell them not to think too much and to do their best to escape. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 24:18. With the cultivation base of Long Qing, Xin Yuanling, and the others, the speed of the spatial spirit boat was naturally slower than that of Qi Mei and Purple Snake, the two evil lords. Furthermore, Xiaochen did not need to defend against the continuous attacks from the phantasms, so he had no way to control the spatial spirit boat. With the cultivation base of Long Qing, Xin Yuanling, and the others, the speed of the spatial spirit boat was naturally slower than that of Qi Mei and Purple Snake, the two evil lords. Furthermore, Xiaochen did not need to defend against the continuous attacks from the phantasms, so he had no way to control the spatial spirit boat. The evil spirits had already made their decision. They would stall Xiaochen, otherwise he would have time to control the spatial spirit boats. If this continued, with Qi Mei and Purple Snake's cultivations, they would catch up to Xiaochen's group sooner or later. The distance between the two sides kept closing. Although it wasn't fast, the evil spirits group was indeed closing in on Xiaochen's group. The two spatial spirit boats kept closing in. If this continued, not long after, the evil spirits group would be able to block the path of Xiaochen's group. A helpless look flashed in his eyes. With things like this, Xiaochen indeed had no other choice. After all, no matter how many plans he had, in this kind of situation, it was very hard to use them. To put it bluntly, the difference in strength between the two sides was just too big. If it was just the evil spirits that came this time, it wouldn't matter if Xiaochen fought with them. But it was a pity that there was also Purple Snake in Qi Mei. Like this, Xiaochen had no chance of winning at all. Sending out three evil lords at the same time, Xia Tian's meaning from the beginning was very clear. He didn't want to give Xiaochen any chance to make a comeback. The evil spirits were also very clear on this point, so they didn't give Xiaochen any chance at all when they made a move. Although the evil spirits admired Xiaochen very much and sympathized with him, there were some things that they couldn't do anything about. Everyone had their own master, so the evil spirits could only kill him. After all, the evil spirits had already lost the last battle between the righteous and evil. They could not afford to lose again. Therefore, the evil spirits had to kill Xiaochen. There was a trace of pity in his heart, but he didn't show the slightest mercy. His attacks didn't stop at all. In this regard, Xiaochen could only helplessly counterattack. Looking at Xiaochen and the evil spirits continuously attacking each other, Guling Yao and the other two girls could not help at all. With their cultivation, they were no match for the evil spirits. They could not even take one hit from him. Their faces were filled with worry, but there was nothing they could do. However, the three girls did not feel much fear. It was like the three girls said before, as long as they could stay by Xiao Chen's side, even if they died, the three girls would not be afraid. The three girls knew that this trip would be dangerous from the beginning, but the three of them still chose to follow Xiao Chen without any hesitation. So, even if they were in a hopeless situation, the three girls were not afraid at all. Gritting their teeth, the three girls stared at Xiao Chen in front of them, not caring about the space spirit ship that came closer and closer. At the same time, Xiao Chen seemed to have noticed the gazes of the three girls and he revealed a helpless smile as he spoke. It seems like there's nothing we can do this time. When he said this, Xiao Chen's face was filled with helplessness and self-deprecation, but there was no fear. Hearing this, Gu Lingyao and the other two revealed faint smiles as they said, "We're not afraid." The four of them looked at each other and saw no trace of fear in each other's eyes. They were not afraid of death. As long as they could stay by each other's side, that was enough. Looking at the three girls' expressions, Xiao Chen had mixed feelings. But at this moment, no one knew where they were, but a spatial barrier appeared in front of them. A spatial barrier. This was a place that divided the boundaries of a world. In the past, the Eight Desolates world also had a spatial barrier. But what was strange was that above the spatial barrier of the Heaven Awakened world, there was a huge black hole. It was like the mouth of an abyss that opened its bloody mouth wide, wanting to devour everything. The appearance of the mysterious black hole stunned Li Ku and the others. Then, they shouted anxiously. "Sect Master, you see." Upon hearing Li Ku and the others' voices, Xiao Chen turned to look. Even with Xiao Chen's eyesight, he had never seen a spatial black hole before. This wasn't a spatial channel, but a mysterious black hole. Xiao Chen had never seen or come into contact with it before. Instinctively, Xiao Chen sensed a strong and dangerous aura from the mysterious black hole. The aura made Xiao Chen shudder even though it was not cold. This was a shiver that came from the depths of his soul. It was as though it was constantly telling Xiao Chen that this thing was dangerous and that he had to get away from it as soon as possible. Sure enough, as the spatial spirit boat got closer to the mysterious black hole, a huge suction force appeared as though it wanted to suck Xiao Chen and the others in. Sensing the appearance of this huge suction force, Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling, who were controlling the spatial spirit boat, shouted anxiously. "Little brother, this is bad. We have to get here as soon as possible. The suction force is too strong." This suction force wasn't something that Xiao Chen and the others could resist with their cultivation. Besides, they had never seen such power before. The spatial spirit boat was on the verge of going out of control. On the other side, the evil spirits also saw the mysterious black hole. Evidently, Xia Ming and the others had long since known about the existence of this mysterious black hole. After all, the Heaven Awakened world had been under the corrupt path's control for a long time. After taking control of the Heaven Awakened world, the corrupt path had discovered this mysterious black hole. Even Xia Tian had personally come to this place to study it. However, the results were disappointing because even Xia Tian couldn't figure out what this mysterious black hole was. It wasn't a spatial channel, so they didn't know where this mysterious black hole led to. Xia Tian even wanted to enter it to test it out, but he was surrounded by danger. Even Xia Tian couldn't figure out the mysteries of this mysterious black hole and even sensed a strong dangerous aura from it. That was why the evil path gave up on this place and no longer approached it. Who would have thought that they would actually end up in the mysterious black hole? A grim look flashed across the phantasm's eyes as he gazed at the mysterious black hole. To humans, the unknown was often the most frightening thing, because they had no idea what kind of dangers were lurking behind it. Slow down. Because they were afraid of the mysterious black hole, the evil spirits had no choice but to speak. Seeing the evil spirits slow down, Xiao Chen's eyes also locked onto the mysterious black hole. After hesitating for a bit, Xiao Chen quickly made a decision. He said to Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling, "Charge in." "What?" Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling coldly said, "Charge in." This is our only chance of survival." Hearing this, Xiaochen said in a deep voice. Although Xiaochen also felt the danger of this mysterious black hole, facing the evil spirit's pursuit, Xiaochen had no other choice. This was their only chance of survival. Even though Xiaochen didn't know how big this chance was, compared to being caught by the evil spirits, there was definitely a chance of survival. Although this chance of survival was very small and might not even exist, Xiaochen could only give it a try. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 24:19. Facing the relentless pursuit of the evil spirits, Xiaochen felt that the mysterious black hole in front of him was their only chance. Facing the relentless pursuit of the evil spirits, Xiaochen felt that the mysterious black hole in front of him was their only chance. Although it was also hard to say whether they would survive or not, at least there was still a chance. If they stayed and were caught by the evil spirits, they would definitely die. Therefore, Xiaochen couldn't help but shout at this time. Hearing Xiaochen shout, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling were stunned. Then, they both gritted their teeth and immediately stopped controlling the spatial spirit boat, allowing the powerful suction force of the mysterious black hole to suck the spatial spirit boat in. Seeing that Xiaochen and the others' spatial spirit boat was directly sucked into the mysterious black hole, evil spirit's face darkened. "Are you going to burn your boats? Xiaochen, do you really think that this will give you a chance of survival?" The evil spirits had no way to stop Xiaochen and the others. Because of the mysterious black hole, the evil spirits didn't dare to go near it. Therefore, they could only watch as Xiaochen and the others were sucked into the black hole and disappeared. In the end, they couldn't kill Xiaochen with their own hands. However, the evil spirits also knew that this was Xiaochen's gamble. He gambled on the chance that there was a chance in the mysterious black hole. Regarding this, the evil spirits were a little depressed, but there was nothing they could do. At the same time, Purple Snake and Chimei also came to the deck. Looking at the mysterious black hole in front of them, the two of them said with a somewhat ugly expression, "What do we do now? Let's go back. Even Father can't see through the mysterious black hole. What can we do? Moreover, Xiaochen and the others will most likely die after entering the mysterious black hole." Hearing this, the evil spirits said indifferently. The evil spirits didn't expect this outcome. On the other hand, Xiaochen and the others who were sucked into the mysterious black hole suddenly felt an endless pressure all around them. The pressure not only suppressed everyone's physical bodies, but it also intimidated everyone's souls. They even became dazed, and their eyelids became abnormally heavy. Even Xiaochen could not resist for long. His vision turned black, and he fainted. No one knew what kind of mysterious black hole it was. Xiaochen and his group could be said to be the only people in the great wide world who had entered the mysterious black hole. However, at this moment, Xiaochen and the others naturally did not know what was happening in the mysterious black hole. Under the powerful pressure of the black hole, everyone fainted. As for the spatial spirit ship that everyone was riding, at this moment, it was like a small boat in the ocean, floating in the huge waves. They didn't know where its destination was, nor did they know where this mysterious black hole would take them. Everything could only depend on God's will. Even Xiaochen was powerless to change anything at this time. While Xiaochen and the others rushed into the mysterious black hole, the evil spirits and the others had no choice but to give up. On the main battlefield, according to the discussion of the sovereigns, they were constantly pressuring the evil way. It could be said that the battle could break out at any time. In the face of the constant pressure from the great wide world, the evil way could only fight and retreat in order to wear down the great wide world's edge. Junwuya and Tenza sat facing each other, drinking tea in front of them. At this time, Tenza sighed softly and said, "It's been 2 days, right?" Hearing Tenza's words, Junwuya nodded slightly. It had indeed been 2 days, but there was still no movement from the evil way's side. The evil spirits and the others also showed no signs of retreating. This made Junwuya worried. Facing such great pressure, Xia Tian still didn't want the evil spirits and the others to retreat. It seemed like he was determined to kill Xiaochen and the others. Thinking of the current situation of Xiao Chen and the others, Jun Wuya couldn't help secretly knitting his brows. However, at this time, Tenza said something that made Jun Wuya even more shocked. Actually, the Heaven Awakened world is not an ordinary small world. It can be said that it is the gateway to the great wide world. Tenza slowly drank a mouthful of tea and said in a soft voice, "Gateway?" Upon hearing the heavenly ancestor's words, Jun Wuya seemed to have thought of something all of a sudden. His expression changed drastically. "You mean," Jun Wuya obviously knew some secrets, but this wasn't strange. After all, Jun Wuya's strength was obvious. In the entire great wide world, there were very few things that Jun Wuya didn't know. At the same time, there were also very few things that could make Jun Wuya this shocked. Seeing Jun Wuya's ugly expression, Tenza shook his head helplessly and said with a bitter smile, "It seems like you also know. In fact, I've been very worried that the Heaven Awakened world has fallen into the hands of the evil way. After all, the Heaven Awakened world is too crucial. But now that Xiao Chen and the others are in the Heaven Awakened world, I'm worried that, you're worried that they will pass through the mysterious black hole?" Upon hearing his words, Jun Wuya interrupted Tenzu before he could finish his sentence. His expression turned incomparably solemn. Jun Wuya and Tenzu both mentioned the mysterious black hole. Besides, they seemed to have guessed whether Xiao Chen and the others would enter the mysterious black hole directly. If that was the case, it would be really dangerous. Jun Wuya didn't know what the mysterious black hole represented because even with his strength, he couldn't detect anything about it. However, with the help of the Heaven Awakened world, Tenza knew more about the mysterious black hole. That was why Tenza called it the gateway. Of course, Tenza didn't tell anyone about this because to Tenzu, it was like a Pandora's box. Once it was opened, the consequences would be unimaginable. Tenzu and Jun Wuya talked about the mysterious black hole at the same time. At the same time, Xiao Chen and the others drifted in the mysterious black hole for an unknown period of time. Finally, they left the mysterious black hole and appeared in an endless starry sky. There was still a huge mysterious black hole in front of Xiao Chen and the others. This should be the other exit of the mysterious black hole. However, Xiao Chen and the others were completely unaware of this because they were all unconscious. Because no one was controlling the spatial spirit ship, it drifted with the waves in the endless heart. No one knew where it would go in the next second. Time seemed to have completely stopped in this endless starry sky. No one knew how much time had passed. 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months. As time slowly passed, Xiao Chen, who was in a coma, finally opened his eyes slowly. At first, he was a little confused. However, after quickly recovering, Xiao Chen looked at the endless starry sky and sighed in his heart. It seems that it's a success. He was fine. After checking on Gu Lingyao and the other 2 girls, as well as Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, Li Ku, and the others, Xiao Chen found that everyone was fine. They were just in a coma. This made Xiao Chen calm down a little. He had finally escaped a disaster. However, he didn't know where everyone was now. Please add me to your collection, monthly vote, recommend me. End of chapter. Chapter 24-20. After escaping death, Xiao Chen moved Gu Lingyao, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others into the cabin. After feeding them ammunition, Xiao Chen went to the deck and looked around. After escaping death, Xiao Chen moved Gu Lingyao, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others into the cabin. After feeding them ammunition, Xiao Chen went to the deck and looked around. Although it was extremely dangerous, Xiao Chen had made the right bet. The mysterious black hole had given them a chance to survive. In Xiao Chen's opinion, as long as they were not dead, there was still hope. After all, only by surviving would there be infinite possibilities. However, the most important thing now was to figure out where everyone was now. There was an endless starry sky, and the mysterious black hole had long disappeared. Xiao Chen had no direction. After all, Xiao Chen did not even know where he was now. Helpless, Xiao Chen steered the spatial spirit boat in a direction to avoid it. He planned to find a continent to check out and confirm where he was before making any plans. While Xiaochen steered the spatial spirit boat, 3 days later, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others woke up one after another. After everyone woke up, they all asked where they were. Regarding this, Xiaochen could only tell them that he did not know. Third brother, did we come to another small thousand world through the spatial black hole? Standing on the deck with Xiaochen, Xianyuan Ling guessed that it had been 3 days, but they still did not see any continents. During these 3 days, Xiaochen had been moving in one direction. No matter what, they should have at least encountered a continent. At the very least, they should have met someone who was also traveling in the starry sky. However, it was a pity that Xiaochen and the others did not even see a shadow in these 3 days. Xianyuan Ling also guessed that they had come to an unknown small thousand world through the mysterious black hole. Hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Xiaochen did not answer because he was not sure. However, just as the two were talking, Long Qing shouted excitedly in the cabin, "Little brother, Ling Yao and the others have woken up." Gu Ling Yao and the other two had the weakest cultivation among everyone, so naturally, they were the last to wake up. Hearing Long Qing's words, Xiaochen was also happy and hurried into the cabin. Seeing that Gu Ling Yao and the other two had woken up, Xiaochen was also relieved. He then smiled and asked, "How are you? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "Husband, don't worry. We're all fine." Hearing this, Gu Ling Yao and the other two smiled and said. After personally checking the bodies of Gu Ling Yao and the other two, Xiaochen was finally relieved after confirming that they were fine. The 3 of them naturally asked Xiaochen about what had happened. In this regard, Xiaochen could only tell the 3 of them the truth. The mysterious black hole had indeed saved their lives, but now, Xiaochen did not know where they had appeared. Seeing that Xiaochen's face was a little solemn when he talked about the current situation, Tianyu also smiled and comforted him. "Husband, it's already a great fortune to be alive. Anyway, as long as we're alive, there will be a day when we can return to the Great Thousand World." Tianyu comforted him. In this regard, Gu Ling Yao and Hong Xiu naturally agreed. Hearing the 3 of them, Xiaochen also smiled and said, "Yes, you're right. We're lucky enough to be alive. As for where we are, there's no need to worry about it." As long as they were alive, there was hope for them to return to the Great Thousand World. After chatting with the 3 of them for a while, Xiaochen returned to the deck again. Although Xiaochen's mood had improved a lot with the awakening of Gu Ling Yao and the other two, he still did not dare to let his guard down. This was because everything around him was too unfamiliar, so Xiaochen did not dare to be careless. After traveling for another half a month, a continent finally appeared in front of Xiaochen and the rest. They could not see the end of the continent at a glance. Xiaochen did not hesitate at all and immediately let Xianyuan Ling land on this continent. The most important thing now was to find out where they were. The spatial spirit boat slowly landed in an uninhabited mountain range on this continent. After keeping the spatial spirit boat, Xiaochen and the rest immediately left the mountain range. This time, Xiaochen and the rest were lucky. As soon as they left the mountain range, they saw a town. Although the area was not big, they finally saw people. As long as they knew where this place was, Xiaochen and the rest could plan to return to the Great Thousand World. Walking toward the town, Xiaochen and the rest smoothly entered the city. After all, this was just a Xiaochen, so the management was naturally very lax. There was also no such thing as an entrance fee. After entering the city, Xiaochen saw a few soldiers who were in charge of guarding the city gate. Although they were called soldiers, they were actually a few old men. To put it bluntly, they were just old and weak soldiers. Xiaochen stepped forward and asked politely, "Elders, I'd like to ask where this place is." "Eh?" Upon hearing Xiaochen's question, the few old men were stunned. Then, they said flatly, "This is the Lin country, Wanshan City." "Why? You don't even know where this place is?" Upon hearing this, the few old men sized up Xiaochen and the rest suspiciously. Speaking of which, Xiaochen and the rest looked rather noble and were dressed in extraordinary clothes. At a glance, one could tell that they were not ordinary people. This was also the reason why the few old men patiently answered Xiao Chen's question. However, after hearing their words, Xiao Chen and the rest were completely stunned. The Lin country, Wanshan City? Where's this place? I've never heard of it. For a moment, Xiao Chen and the rest thought that they must have been transported to a small thousand world. Immediately, Xiao Chen took out a spirit stone and handed it to the few old men. Then, he asked, "Elders, what is the name of this continent that we're heading to?" In this world. The Lin country and Wanshan City were obviously not enough for Xiao Chen to know where this place was. However, in response to Xiao Chen's question, the few old men were stunned. They had never stepped out of the Lin country in their entire lives, so how would they know what this continent was called? There was no world yet, so these few old men had no idea at all. It was like asking an ant what the world was. Would it be able to answer you? However, when they saw the spirit stone that Xiao Chen handed over, they were stunned. Then, they said excitedly, "A spirit stone." Apparently, in the old men's eyes, the spirit stone in Xiao Chen's hand was called a spirit stone. However, while they were shocked, a fat monk in a monk's robe appeared before them. He put his palms together and said solemnly to Xiao Chen, "Benefactor, this poor monk can see the dark aura on your face. I'm afraid that a bloody disaster will befall you in the near future. This poor monk is a monk. Since we're fated to meet, I naturally won't stand idly by. This is a Buddha bead that this poor monk personally consecrates. It will ensure that you survive this calamity. Amitabha. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation." Chapter 24-21. Xiao Chen and the rest were taken aback by the sudden appearance of the monk. However, they didn't think too much about the monk's solemn expression. On the other hand, Xiao Chen returned the greeting. "Master, thank you for your kind intentions," but, with Xiao Chen's eyesight, it wasn't difficult for him to see that the string of Buddhist beads in the monk's hand was something that could be found anywhere on the streets. As for the consecration mentioned by the monk, Xiao Chen didn't believe in it at all. Xiao Chen wanted to reject the monk, but before Xiao Chen finished his sentence, the monk interrupted. "Amitabha. Benefactor, this poor monk has the intention to help you. I hope you won't reject my offer. You don't even have the right to reject." When the monk said that, there wasn't the slightest change in his expression. He indeed looked like a highly respected senior monk. However, when the monk stopped Xiao Chen and the rest, some of the people around the city gate began to whisper among themselves. "It's that flowery monk again. These outsiders are doomed. I reckon they're going to be blackmailed by him again. That's right. Sigh, which temple did this damned flowery monk come from? He's really repulsive." It was obvious that there were quite a few people who knew this monk in this small myriad mountain city. However, every time the monk was mentioned, everyone's eyes would uncontrollably reveal a trace of hatred. It was obvious that the monk's reputation was not good. Logically speaking, since he was a monk, he shouldn't be hated by so many people. However, the expressions of the people around didn't seem to be fake, especially the hatred in their eyes. However, the monk wasn't bothered at all. He stuffed the Buddhist beads into Xiao Chen's hand and put his palms together. "Amitabha. Benefactor, please accept it." The monk forcefully stuffed the Buddhist beads into Xiao Chen's hand. Regarding this, Xiao Chen was extremely helpless. This was indeed a string of the most ordinary Buddhist beads. What use was there for it? However, Xiao Chen wasn't in the mood to argue with the monk. After casually defeating the Buddha, Xiao Chen prepared to leave. He still needed to find out where he was as soon as possible. However, Xiao Chen wanted to leave. However, Tyrant did not allow him to do so. He took a step forward and blocked the path of Xiao Chen and the others. Seeing this, Xiao Chen frowned. His expression gradually turned cold as he looked at Tyrant. In the face of Xiao Chen's gradually darkening face, the monk acted as if he did not see it. He said with the appearance of an eminent monk, "Benefactor, you are merciful. This poor monk will help you pass through this tribulation peacefully. I hope that benefactor can remember Buddha's mercy and donate some money. This monk wants money? Upon hearing this, not only Xiao Chen, but even Long Qing and Xian Yuanling's expressions turned unfriendly. After saying so much, how could they not understand that this *T monk was here for money right from the start? Gu Lingyao said snappily. Hey, didn't you say that you are a monk? Monks are particular about not having anything in their sleeves. Gu Lingyao was about to berate Tyrant, but before he finished his sentence, Xiao Chen interrupted him. Master, please accept this small token of my respect. Xiao Chen was actually a little unhappy. However, he was unfamiliar with this place and Xiao Chen didn't want to stir up trouble. Besides, his intuition told him that this monk wasn't simple. Therefore, Xiao Chen retrieved some gold coins from his storage ring and handed them to the monk. A few gold coins were nothing to Xiao Chen. Besides, Xiao Chen basically didn't need gold coins now. However, the monk didn't even look at the gold coins that Xiao Chen handed over. His eyes were still closed as he said slowly, Amitabha, this poor monk won't accept these worldly things. Benefactor, it's better for you to give this poor monk some spirit stones. Originally, they thought that this monk had changed his style or that they had misjudged him. However, after hearing this, they realized that this monk was definitely not a good person. He didn't want gold coins, but he wanted spirit stones. Moreover, his appetite was King big. Immediately, Long Qing couldn't help but shout, Monk, don't push your luck. Get out of the way. They were no longer in the mood to continue arguing with this crazy monk. From the beginning until now, how could they not see that this monk was here for spirit stones from the beginning? In the face of the current situation, the surrounding people didn't seem to find it strange. Each of them revealed a natural expression. It seemed that this wasn't the first time this monk had done such things in Wanshan City. Everyone was completely used to it. Xiao Chen looked coldly at the monk. His tone also became extremely cold as he said, Master, we have no intention of instigating enmity with you. I hope that you won't make a mistake. After saying that, Xiao Chen prepared to leave in a flash. It was absolutely impossible for him to give the monk spirit stones. Although a few spirit stones were nothing to Xiao Chen was very disgusted by the monk's swindling methods. Therefore, he didn't have the slightest good impression of the monk. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Chen had more important things to do, Xiao Chen would probably have directly taught this crazy monk a lesson. Not in the mood to argue with the monk, Xiao Chen only wanted to enter the city as soon as possible and find out where this place was. However, just as Xiao Chen passed by the monk, he heard the monk murmur softly without changing his expression, Amitabha. My Buddha is merciful. Benefactor, a bloody disaster has already arrived. After saying that, Xiao Chen suddenly felt an extreme sense of danger coming from the monk. The fat monk, who originally looked very ordinary, now gave Xiao Chen an extreme sense of oppression. Moreover, before Xiao Chen could react, an invisible force directly hit Xiao Chen's abdomen without any movement from the monk. The blood in his body surged, and Xiao Chen couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Seeing Xiao Chen spit out a mouthful of blood, Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the others at the side glared angrily. They didn't need to think to know that all of this was the monk's doing. Glaring angrily at the fat monk with a solemn expression, Long Qing shouted coldly, Monk, you're courting death. No one saw the monk make a move, but all of this was definitely related to the monk. Everyone's eyes were locked on the monk, and so was Xiao Chen. However, in Xiao Chen's eyes, there was a trace of shock. Xiao Chen had been on guard just now, but it was useless. The monk had easily wounded him. Moreover, Xiao Chen felt a power that he had never felt before from the monk. He had never felt this kind of power even from the venerable sovereigns. The only thing that was similar to it was his master, Jun Wuya, who seemed to have shown this kind of power before. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 24-22. Xiao Chen looked solemnly at the monk. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, the monk still looked solemn, as if he was not the one who had attacked just now. Xiao Chen looked solemnly at the monk. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, the monk still looked solemn, as if he was not the one who had attacked just now. However, Xiao Chen did not make a move, but Long Qing could not hold it in any longer. He threw out a punch, and then a loud dragon roar resounded. Seeing that Long Qing was so angry that he attacked, Xiao Chen wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Judging from the monk's methods and aura, Xiao Chen already knew that this fat monk was definitely not simple. Moreover, Xiao Chen had not been able to see through the monk's cultivation until now. Logically speaking, with Xiao Chen's current strength, he could even see through the cultivation of a venerable emperor. However, Xiao Chen could not see through this monk at all. He wanted to stop Long Qing, but he did not make it in time. At the same time, facing Long Qing's angry punch, the monk was not moved at all. He put his palms together and whispered, "Amitabha, Buddha is merciful." Following the monk's words, a golden light shot up into the sky behind him. At the same time, the shadow of a Buddha slowly appeared. For a moment, the monk really gave people the feeling that Buddha was alive. The golden light was very gentle. It had to be said that the monk in front of them cultivated the purest Buddhist cultivation method. It was magnificent and righteous, without the slightest sense of evil. At the same time, with the appearance of the golden light, Long Qing was directly sent flying. Facing such an outcome, Xiao Chen and the others were stunned. The crowd were all able to tell that Long Qing had not held back in the slightest in his earlier punch. However, even with that being the case, Long Qing was unable to even touch the corner of the fat monk's clothes. From this, it could be seen that the fat monk's strength was definitely extraordinary. However, this fat monk clearly did not have the intention to kill. He did not severely injure Long Qing either. All he did was send Long Qing flying. Standing up, Long Qing looked at the fat monk in front of him with fear. His eyes were solemn. At this moment, the fat monk retracted his aura and became squared again. "I never expected to meet an ancestral dragon." "Amitabha," the fat monk said as he glanced at Long Qing. Clearly, he had seen through Long Qing's identity and pointed out that Long Qing had the ancestral dragon bloodline. The fat monk's strength made everyone feel as if they were facing a great enemy. They couldn't help but feel nervous. Each and every one of them looked at the fat monk with fear. Who would have thought that they would meet such an expert in such a small city? Although they did not know the specific cultivation of the fat monk, in the eyes of the crowd, the fat monk was like a boundless and bottomless sea. It was impossible to measure. Fortunately, the fat monk did not intend to continue attacking. Instead, he looked at Xiao Chen and said with a smile, "Benefactor, this poor monk has resolved your bloody disaster. My Buddha is merciful. I hope that benefactor can give me some money." The fat monk said again. Hearing this, Xiao Chen did not hesitate. He directly took out 10 top-grade spiritual stones and handed them to the fat monk. In response, the fat monk accepted them with a smile and then left with a smile. This guy is not a good person. How can he be a monk? He stinks of money. Seeing the fat monk leave, Gu Lingyao pouted and said unhappily. Gu Lingyao was obviously very unhappy with the fat monk. In Gu Lingyao's opinion, the fat monk was not a good person. However, in response, Xiao Chen just smiled and did not say anything. He directly led the crowd into the city. Xiao Chen was not angry at this strange monk because the fat monk did not try to kill him. Moreover, the fat monk was not weak. Xiao Chen could not see through the fat monk's cultivation. If they really fought, the crowd would not be a match for the fat monk. The fat monk did not use his strength to rob them. He just took the 10 spiritual stones and left. In Xiao Chen's opinion, with the fat monk's strength, 10 spiritual stones were probably nothing. It could only be said that the fat monk's personality was a little strange. However, Xiao Chen had just arrived in this world and he had already met such a strange and powerful monk. Xiao Chen could not help but frown. He wondered in his heart, was this really a small world? If it was a small world, how could there be such a master? Although he was not sure, Xiao Chen was 80% sure that the fat monk's cultivation had surpassed the emperor realm. It had reached a level that Xiao Chen and the others had never heard of. He was probably much stronger than Junwuya and Xia Tian. How could a world with such a powerhouse be a lesser thousand world? Xiao Chen could not help but feel suspicious. Although there were some twists and turns, the crowd entered the city without any major hindrances. They first strolled around the city. Of course, Xiao Chen and the others also asked some people on the roadside, but the answers they received were more or less the same. Many people only knew that this was the Lin country's myriad mountain city. They could not answer Xiao Chen's question. After all, it was difficult for these ordinary people to answer where this place was. For ordinary people, it was already good to be able to leave the Lin country in their lifetime. Many people had not even left Myriad Mountain City in their lifetime. Therefore, they naturally knew nothing about the outside world. Somewhat helpless, in the end, Xiao Chen and the others came to the largest restaurant in Myriad Mountain City. If they wanted to inquire about information, the best place was naturally a restaurant. If they could not find the answer Xiao Chen wanted here, then they would have to go to a bigger city. As soon as they entered the restaurant, a waiter quickly came up to them. Seeing that Xiao Chen and the others had an extraordinary bearing, the waiter greeted them with a flattering smile. "Dear guests, please come in." With that, the waiter led Xiao Chen and the others into the restaurant. The first floor was the hall, which was very noisy. Xiao Chen and the others really came to inquire about information, so they did not ask for a private room and directly found a seat in the hall. However, it was really a coincidence. Just as Xiao Chen and the others were sitting down, another guest came in from outside the door. At a glance, it was actually the fat monk who was at the city gate previously. However, at this time, there were two scantily clad young girls beside the fat monk. At a glance, they looked like prostitutes. It was a very strange scene. A monk who was wearing a monk's robe and looked like an eminent monk at first glance was holding a beautiful young girl in one arm. There was a lecherous smile on his face, and his hands were dirty and clumsy. How was he like a monk? He was even more exaggerated than a hooligan. Furthermore, from the monk's expression, it wasn't hard to tell that he was definitely an old hand in this area. Not to mention, under his hands, the two girls' faces were already flushed red. They were constantly exhaling and laughing at the monk's chubby cheeks. Seeking collection, monthly votes, recommendations. Chapter 24-23. A fat monk walked into the restaurant with two prostitutes in his arms. Everyone was stunned when they saw this scene. However, many of them quickly recognized the monk and whispered among themselves, "It's that lecherous monk again." A fat monk walked into the restaurant with two prostitutes in his arms. Everyone was stunned when they saw this scene. However, many of them quickly recognized the monk and whispered among themselves, "It's that lecherous monk again." It was obvious that many of the people present knew this monk. At the same time, Guling Yao's expression darkened when she saw the monk. She cursed, "It's this damn monk again. Why is he always haunting us?" When Xiao Chen and his group saw the monk naturally saw Xiao Chen and his group as well. A smile immediately appeared on his face and he took the initiative to walk towards Xiao Chen and his group. The coldness in Guling Yao's eyes grew stronger as she watched the monk walk toward them. However, the monk acted as if he did not see it. He walked past the restriction and came to the table where Xiao Chen and the others were sitting. He then sat down very naturally, not treating himself as an outsider at all. "Amitabha. Benefactor, it seems that you and I are fated to meet. My Buddha is merciful," the monk said with a smile as he carried a woman in his arms. When Guling Yao heard his words, he immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, "If Buddha sees you like this, he will probably chop you up with his blade." A monk and a monk. Both of them were carrying beauties in their arms and were saying Amitabha. Wasn't this a joke? Even Xiao Chen and his group had a strange expression on their faces. It was indeed the first time that Xiao Chen and his group had seen such an eccentric monk. The monk did not seem to care about the gazes of Xiao Chen and his group. He continued to tease the two women beside him as he ate and drank to his heart's content. It was obvious that he did not treat himself as an outsider. Everyone was naturally dissatisfied with the monk's attitude. However, Xiao Chen was an exception. After seeing the monk twice in a row, Xiao Chen could not help but feel curious about him. The monk was definitely not an ordinary person. Furthermore, he did not harbor evil intentions. It was just that his mood was a little strange. With this thought in mind, Xiao Chen took the initiative to speak. "Great Master, I have a question that I would like to ask." Since the monk's cultivation was extraordinary, he should know where this place was. Therefore, Xiao Chen directly asked. When the monk heard Xiao Chen's question, a smile flashed across his eyes. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to ask, the monk took the lead and spoke first. "You want to know where this place is?" Xiao Chen nodded and admitted, "Indeed." "Thank you for enlightening me, Grandmaster." Xiao Chen and Xiao Chen. Xiao. He had never felt like this before. Facing the monk's gaze, Xiao Chen felt as though all his secrets were about to be seen through. He could not hide them at all. He felt as though he was naked in front of everyone. But soon, the monk retracted his gaze. At the same time, he chuckled and said, "I advise you to give up on the thought in your heart. That black hole is one way. It's easy to come in, but difficult to go back." Although he did not answer the question, when they heard the monk's words, not only Xiao Chen, but also Long Qing, Xian Yuan Ling, and the others' expressions changed drastically. They looked at the monk in unison and asked, "Who exactly are you?" The monk's words made everyone's heart sink. How did he know all this? Moreover, according to the monk's words, could it be that they could not go back? Facing everyone's gazes, the monk smiled and said, "Me? I'm just a monk." Ha! As he said that, he kissed the face of the woman beside him. His greasy mouth stained the woman's face. However, the monk did not care at all. Instead, he laughed loudly. "Aya, you're so naughty." The woman was embarrassed by the monk. Looking at the monk's appearance, everyone's faces were filled with black lines. Only Xiao Chen became more and more curious and asked. The monk gave Xiao Chen an extraordinary feeling. In addition to his words just now, it seemed that the monk had already guessed their situation. Therefore, he advised Xiao Chen to give up. Xiao Chen continued to ask unwillingly. However, no matter how much Xiao Chen asked, the monk kept evading the topic. Moreover, from time to time, he would say some dirty words to the two women, causing Gu Lingyao, Tianyue, and Hongxiu to look at him with disdain. Of course, the monk naturally sized up Gu Lingyao and the other two women. Under the influence of the alcohol, he even shook his head and said, "TSK, TSK, TSK, you three little girls. Not bad, not bad. You're almost comparable to my palace master's wife." The lecherous look in his eyes made Gu Lingyao and the other two women clench their teeth. They could not wait to tear this lecherous monk apart on the spot. However, Xiao Chen was keenly aware that although the monk looked lecherous, he deliberately turned his face when he looked at Gu Lingyao and the other two women. At least in the depths of his eyes, the monk's gaze was clear. Just as everyone was drinking, on the other side, the city lord's mansion of Wanshan City was in an uproar. No one knew when a Taoist priest had appeared in the city lord's mansion. Moreover, he had kidnapped the concubine of the city lord's mansion of Wanshan City. In the main hall of the city lord's mansion, the city lord of Wanshan City, Yan He, sat on the main seat with a gloomy face. He had just brought his concubine back to the mansion 3 days ago. Her appearance was definitely outstanding. However, who would have thought that she would be kidnapped before he even had a chance to taste her? Moreover, it was in broad daylight. Idiots, a bunch of trash. There are so many of you and you actually let a stinky Taoist priest kidnap her right in front of your eyes? Yanni scolded furiously as he looked at the guards of the city lord's mansion who were kneeling on the ground. This concubine was originally an ordinary girl from a village near Wanshan City. However, she was indeed exceptionally beautiful. Yanni had only met this girl by chance. With just one look, Yanni was completely infatuated. Subsequently, he used some underhanded means to kill the girl's parents. Then, he forcefully brought the girl back to Wanshan City and made her his concubine. She was originally a duck on the chopping board, a piece of fatty meat that was about to reach his mouth. However, who would have thought that a stinky Taoist priest would appear out of nowhere and kidnap the girl in broad daylight? After being scolded by Yanhi, the guards of the city lord's mansion lowered their heads and did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. After venting his anger, Yanni's mood calmed down a little. Then, he shouted in a deep voice. "Seal the city and find them. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you must find that stinky Taoist priest and the little beauty for me. I want to see who exactly dares to provoke me." Hearing Yanni's words, everyone in the hall responded respectfully. Yes. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 24-24. His new concubine had been kidnapped by a stinky Taoist. As the governor of Wanshan City, Yanni naturally wouldn't let it go so easily. He immediately gave the order to seal the city. No matter what, he had to find that stinky Taoist. After Yanni gave the order to seal the city, the entire Wanshan City was quickly sealed off. These guys even activated the city protection array. It could be said that they were mighty. Hearing this, many people had a premonition that something big was about to happen. However, Xiao Chen and the others who were in the restaurant were completely unaware of it. After drinking and chatting, Xiao Chen and the monk gradually became familiar with each other. Putting aside the monk's strange temperament, Xiao Chen felt that he was a good guy. He had a straightforward personality. Although what he did wasn't what a monk should do, it had nothing to do with Xiao Chen. However, the only thing that Xiao Chen felt was a pity was that no matter how many questions he asked about this world, the monk would only answer him with a smile and never give him a direct answer. This made Xiao Chen feel extremely helpless. Just as everyone was drinking and chatting, and the monk was hugging women, another Taoist walked in from outside the door. Beside him was a beautiful young girl. Looking at the Taoist priest's bootlicking appearance, everyone felt as if their worldview had been destroyed. What was going on today? A monk was still hugging girls, and now, a Taoist priest had appeared. Furthermore, he was licking the girl's bootlicking appearance. Facing this, the girl appeared to be somewhat fearful. It looked like a lecherous Taoist who had abducted and sold a good woman. However, the Taoist priest did not pay any attention to the gazes of the surrounding people. His gaze quickly locked onto the monk and he strode over. As he walked, he shouted, "Stinky monk, you're King delicious." He scolded unhappily. Hearing this, Xiao Chen and the others also looked over. They saw a Taoist who was wearing a Taoist robe and had a body shape that was completely opposite of a monk. He strode over. The fat monk and the skinny Taoist priest. How should one put it? Indeed, there was an indescribable feeling when these two fellows were together. Furthermore, there was a young lady following behind the Taoist. When they reached the table, the Taoist pulled out a chair for himself just like the monk. Then, he said to the young lady behind him in a flattering manner, "Little beauty, come and cook. Eat something. Don't worry, with this Taoist master here, everything will be fine." Looking at the Taoist priest's flattering smile, Xiao Chen and the others were speechless. What kind of weirdo was this? Compared to the helplessness of Xiao Chen and the others, Tyrant said nonchalantly, "These are my new friends. That's Xiao Chen. He's a nice guy. Ha." After a round of introductions, the monk turned his gaze to the young girl beside the Taoist priest. He frowned and said, "I say, are you crazy? You even want to mess with a woman from her maiden family?" The monk's meaning was obvious. He thought that the Taoist priest had forcefully abducted a woman from a good family. However, the Taoist priest did not hold back and directly scolded, "Bullsh*t, this Taoist master is just helping out when he sees injustice. Then, the Taoist priest briefly told the story of the young lady. He learned that the young lady's name was Chen Yener. She was the new concubine of the Wanshan city's lord, Yan He. Hearing about Chen Yener's experience, Gu Ling Yao and the other two were naturally filled with righteous indignation. After all, Yan He's actions were indeed worse than a beast. Taking a fancy to her beauty, he wanted to kill her parents. What kind of logic was this? He was worse than a beast. Sympathizing with Chen Yener's experience, Gu Ling Yao and the other two took the initiative to chat with Chen Yener out of kindness. Perhaps because they were all women, Chen Yener was obviously not so hostile towards Gu Ling Yao and the other two. Therefore, the four women began to chat after a short while. When the Taoist priest saw Chen Yener and Gu Ling Yao chatting happily, a smile flashed across his eyes. Although the Taoist priest had always shown a lustful look towards Chen Yener, it seemed that he was no different from Yang Song. He also coveted Chen Yener's beauty. However, along the way, the Taoist priest had never forced Chen Yener to do anything, nor did he do anything to Chen Yener. Therefore, in the Taoist priest's heart, his purpose was actually very simple. He wanted to save Chen Yener. As for his behavior, it could be said that the Taoist priest deliberately pretended to be lustful, or it could be said that it was his nature. However, although the Taoist priest was lustful, he also knew that a gentleman's desire for money was justified. Obviously, he would not do something worse than a beast like Yan He. He minded his own business and drank wine. He even rudely snatched a woman from the monk and held her in his arms. Looking at the monk and the Taoist priest in front of him, Xiaochen really admired these two people. Even with such a character, they were actually monks. The monk and the Taoist priest were having fun. However, this happy moment did not last long. Soon, Yan He found the Taoist priest's whereabouts. After knowing that the Taoist priest had kidnapped his concubine, not only did he not run away, but he actually swaggered to the largest restaurant in Wanshan City to have fun. Knowing this, Yan He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He immediately brought his men and hurried to the restaurant. With a gloomy face, Yan He strode into the restaurant and saw the monk and the Taoist priest with a lewd smile. Seeing that the two of them were drinking and having fun as if nothing had happened, the veins on Yan He's forehead bulged. He angrily shouted, "What a reckless and stupid Taoist priest!" Following Yan He's scolding, the Taoist priest turned his head and saw Yan He at a glance. He immediately got up and flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand. With a righteous face, he said, "Immeasurable deity, what business does this benefactor have with this humble Taoist?" The speed of this exchange was comparable to flipping a book. However, Yan He was completely furious. What business? Damn it, this stupid Taoist priest had kidnapped his concubine and now he actually pretended not to know him. He even asked him what business he had with him. He had seen thick-skinned people before, but he had never seen such a thick-skinned person. Yan He clenched his fists until they made cracking sounds. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot as he said, "Stupid Taoist priest, you kidnapped my concubine and now you're still putting on an act. Do you think you can fool me like this?" Hearing Yan He's words, the Taoist priest's face instantly revealed a trace of doubt. That expression was simply worthy of being called an award-winning actor. It was as if he really did not know Yan He. Not only that, the Taoist priest's next sentence stunned Yan He, Xiaochen and the rest. Immeasurable deity, this benefactor must be joking. This humble monk is a monk. How could I kidnap someone's concubine? Could it be that this benefactor has mistaken me for someone else? Bullshit, if that's the case, then who is the young lady sitting beside you? You're serious without any evidence. Stupid Taoist priest, you still want to quibble? Yan He angrily scolded. In response, he pointed at Xiaochen and the rest unhurriedly and said without changing his expression, "This young lady is with these benefactors. This humble Taoist does not know her. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 24-25. Taoist priest pointed at Xiaochen and the rest with an innocent face. Upon hearing his words, Xiao Chen and the rest were speechless. This guy changed his face too quickly. Furthermore, his acting skills were absolutely superb. Taoist priest pointed at Xiao Chen and the rest with an innocent face. Upon hearing his words, Xiao Chen and the rest were speechless. This guy changed his face too quickly. Furthermore, his acting skills were absolutely superb. Just a moment ago, he brought Chinyener in with a flattering face. Now that she was here, he said that he didn't know Chinyener. This, not only the Taoist priest, but even the monk beside him also said solemnly. Amitabha. Benefactor, this poor monk is a monk. I don't get close to women. Huh. As soon as the monk said that, not only Yanhe, but Xiao Chen and the rest were also taken aback. Don't get close to women? Then what were you hugging just now? A stone. Yanhe was enraged by the monk and the Taoist priest. He immediately shouted, Do you two think I'm a 3-year-old child? Enough nonsense. Hand her over. Otherwise, you won't be able to walk out of Wanshan City today. As he said that, Yanhe also looked at Chinyener, who was terrified. However, when he saw Gu Lingyao and the other 2 girls beside Chinyener, Yanhe was stunned. Then, his eyes suddenly revealed a fiery look. He thought that Chinyener was already a first-class beauty. He didn't expect that Gu Lingyao and the other 2 girls were even more beautiful than Chinyener. There was actually such a beautiful woman in the world. The look in his eyes became extremely fiery at this moment. Noticing the change in Yanhe's eyes, Xiao Chen's eyes also revealed a trace of coldness. This Yanhe was really bold. At the same time, under Yanhe's gaze, Gu Lingyao and the other 2 girls' faces turned gloomy. In an instant, the Taoist priest, who was the initiator, stood aside and watched the show. TSK, there is indeed something wrong with this fellow's brain. He didn't even look at her strength and actually dared to have such thoughts. The Taoist priest curled his lips and looked at Yanhe with a look of pity as he muttered. With Taoist priest's cultivation, he had naturally seen through the cultivation of Xiao Chen and the others. With Xiao Chen's cultivation, killing Yanhe was simply too easy. Not to mention that Yanhe was just the city lord of a small Wanshan city, even the royal family of the Lin Kingdom would not be a match for Xiao Chen and the others. Of course, the Taoist priest and the monk's cultivation were stronger. However, with their personalities, it was better for them not to fight if they could. She was happy to watch the show from the side. At this time, Yanhe said recklessly, Oh, there are 3 more beauties. Haha, not bad, not bad. Bring them back to my residence. His eyes never left Gu Lingyao and the other 2 girls. Hearing this, Tianyu was the first to stand up and point at Yanhe. Yanhe's cultivation was at most equivalent to the immortal king realm. With such strength, he was simply too weak in front of Tianyu. Facing Tianyu's finger, Yanhe, who was still daring in his lust a second ago, did not even have time to react in the next second. The finger light pierced through his forehead and he died on the spot. Therefore, Yanhe was really daring in his lust. In a situation where he did not know the strength of Xiao Chen and the others, he actually dared to have such thoughts. If this was not courting death, what was it? Seeing that Yanhe was killed on the spot with just a finger, the guards of the city lord's residence who came with Yanhe were all stunned. At this time, Tianyu also shouted angrily, Get lost. Hearing Tianyu's words, these people did not dare to stay any longer. They immediately fled and did not even have time to take Yanhe's body away. Yanhe's matter was nothing to Xiao Chen's group, the monk, and the Taoist priest. At most, it was just a small interlude. After dealing with Yanhe, everyone was almost done eating. At this time, the monk took the initiative to speak to Xiao Chen. Brother Xiao Chen, what do you plan to do next? The monk had been unwilling to tell Xiao Chen where this world was, and Xiao Chen was really helpless about it. At this time, hearing the monk's words, he did not hide his thoughts and said bluntly, Find a way to go back. Xiao Chen was indeed looking for a way to return to the Great Thousand World. Xiao Chen did not know the current situation of the Great Thousand World. Moreover, the battle between the good and evil had not ended yet. Xiaochen really did not have the heart to think about other things. However, after hearing Xiaochen's answer, the monk shook his head and said, "Brother Xiaochen, if I'm not wrong, you should have come to this world through the black hole, right?" After chatting with Xiaochen, the monk already knew that Xiaochen and the others were not from this world. Of course, Xiaochen did not tell the monk about the Great Thousand World because the monk also did not tell him and the others about his origin. They had only met twice. Although they hit it off, Xiaochen did not go so far as to tell everything to the monk. Hearing the monk's words, Xiaochen did not answer, but he did not deny it either. Seeing this, the monk took a sip of wine and said, "Actually, the monk and I are the same. We are not from this world. Like you, the monk and I came to this world through the black hole. Moreover, I have already told you before that the black hole is not two-way, but one-way. It is not so easy to return to the world you came from," the monk said bluntly. Hearing this, Xiaochen fell into silence. He did not think that the monk was lying to him because there was no need to. Whether it was the monk or the monk, Xiaochen was sure that their strength was above his, even above Junwuya's. With a cultivation higher than Junwuya's, it was almost certain that they had surpassed the sovereign realm. There was no need for such an existence to lie to him. However, even though the monk said so, Xiaochen still had no intention of giving up. The reason was very simple. He had to return to the Great Thousand World. Looking at the monk, Xiaochen said faintly, "Master, I have a reason to go back." In a simple sentence, Xiaochen gave his answer. In response, the monk said with a smile, "There is only one way to go. That is to get the consent of the World Master of this world. Only then can you leave." "World Master?" Hearing this, a hint of doubt flashed in Xiaochen's eyes. In the Great Thousand World, he had never heard of the World Master. He only knew about Tenzu, but he had never heard of the World Master. Not knowing what the World Master meant, Xiaochen asked, "Master, may I ask who the World Master is?" Xiaochen had indeed never heard of the World Master. In this regard, the monk did not hide anything this time. He simply told Xiaochen about the World Master. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 24-26. Xiaochen didn't know anything about the World Lord because there was no World Lord in the boundless world. According to Tyrant, the World Lord was a person recognized by a world. To put it bluntly, it was an existence that the heavenly way submitted to. Xiaochen didn't know anything about the World Lord because there was no World Lord in the boundless world. According to Tyrant, the World Lord was a person recognized by a world. To put it bluntly, it was an existence that the heavenly way submitted to. It was a simple explanation. Tyrant looked at Xiaochen and said with a smile, "Brother Xiaochen, the world you're from doesn't have a World Lord yet, right?" "Yes." Xiaochen nodded and did not try to hide anything. The boundless world indeed didn't have a World Lord. According to Tyrant, the Tenzu of the boundless world hadn't chosen to submit to anyone, so naturally, there wasn't a World Lord. In a world, the Tenzu was created by heaven and earth. It was responsible for setting the rules of the world and ensuring the normal operation of the world. The World Lord could be said to be the protector of the world. Even the Tenzu had no choice but to submit to it. Of course, the World Lord could only be born if the Tenzu chose to submit to it. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the World Lord could be said to be the strongest person in the world and its strength was above the Tenzu's. After talking about the World Lord, Tyrant talked about this world. According to Tyrant, this world was called the Primordial World. It was vast and boundless and there were many powerful beings in it. After learning the name of this world, Xiaochen asked curiously, "Master, so you guys..." Xiaochen also realized that Tyrant and Taoist priest weren't from the primordial world. Tyrant didn't hide the truth. "Oh, we're not from the primordial world. Just like you, we came from another world." Tyrant had no intention of hiding anything from Xiaochen. He quickly told Xiaochen that they had come from the outside world. Moreover, Tyrant and the others had come to the Hongmeng world for a different purpose than Xiaochen. Xiaochen and the others were being hunted down. They had no choice but to take the risk and come to the primordial world. As for the monk and the Taoist priest, they came to the primordial world of their own accord. According to Tyrant, there was also a black hole in their macro world. This black hole was connected to the Hongmeng world. Tyrant, Taoist, and the others came from a force called Cloud Palace. This time, they followed Cloud Palace's palace master to the Hongmeng world to understand this world. Of course, Cloud Palace's palace master also wanted to exchange pointers with the world lord of the Hongmeng world. As one's cultivation grew stronger, one would realize that this world was boundless. Those with weak cultivation would think that the world was only as big as what they saw. However, when one truly stood at the peak, one would realize that this world was much bigger than what one could imagine. Xiaochen naturally did not know who the Cloud Palace's palace master that Tyrant mentioned was. He also did not know what Cloud Palace represented in the macro world. However, Xiaochen could still make out something from Tyrant's words. The Hongmeng world and the macro world were probably existences similar to the Great Thousand World. They also contained countless small thousand worlds. Moreover, world lords had already been born in the Hongmeng world and the macro world, unlike the Great Thousand World which had yet to have a world lord. As such, the martial Tao of these two macro worlds was naturally much stronger than that of the Great Thousand World. At the very least, they had masters who surpassed the Emperor realm. The cultivation realm above the Emperor realm had always been a mystery in the Great Thousand World. Even Junwuya and Xiatian were only half a step away from surpassing the Emperor realm. They did not know anything about the realms after the Emperor realm. Xiaochen was very curious about this. He could not help but ask, "Grandmaster, may I ask what your realm is?" "Oh, it's just the Ancestor Realm Great Perfection," Tyrant said with a smile. The Ancestor Realm was the realm after the Emperor realm. Tyrant and Taoist priest were now at the Ancestor Realm Great Perfection. Such a cultivation could be said to be invincible in the Great Thousand World. However, in the macro world and the Hongmeng world, they were not the strongest masters because there were still world lords above them. Xiaochen benefited a lot from the conversation with Tyrant. At the same time, his horizons were broadened a lot. Xiaochen realized that there were so many masters outside the Great Thousand World. Sighing softly, Xiaochen secretly sighed in his heart, the martial Tao has no limit. It's true that the Great Thousand World is just a drop in the ocean in the vast universe. Xiaochen understood the universe from Tyrant's words. Xiaochen was shocked by this. Looking at Xiaochen's appearance, Tyrant said with a smile, "Brother Xiaochen, there is only one way for you to return to your Great Thousand World, and that is to get the recognition of the World Lord of the Hongmeng world. If you don't mind, we can travel together and meet our palace master first. How about it?" Tyrant had a good impression of Xiaochen, so he took the initiative to ask to travel together. In Tyrant's opinion, Xiaochen could not return to the Great Thousand World without the help of his palace master. This was because only his palace master could talk to the world lord of the Hongmeng world. With Xiaochen's strength, he was not even comparable to Tyrant and Taoist. Not to mention getting the approval of the world lord of the Hongmeng world, it was uncertain whether he could even meet him. Hearing Tyrant's words, Xiaochen naturally knew that Tyrant wanted to help him. Moreover, Xiaochen was indeed in a hurry to return to the Great Thousand World, so he gladly nodded and agreed. Seeing that Xiaochen had agreed, a simple and honest smile appeared on Tyrant's face. He gulped down the wine in his cup, stood up and said, "Let's go then. We've been out for quite some time. It's time to go back." Tyrant and Taoist originally came to the Hongmeng world with a group of masters from the Cloud Palace. However, the two of them were bored and came out alone. After such a long time, it was time to go back. However, before they left, they had to deal with Chen Yenner's matter. Tyrant looked at Taoist and Taoist understood. He then asked Chen Yenner, "Little beauty, what do you plan to do next?" Hearing Taoist address her as Taoist, Chen Yenner was a little helpless, but then she said in a lonely voice, "I don't know." Chinyener's parents had been killed. Now that she was a woman with no one to rely on, she did not know what to do in the future. Tyrant smiled and said, "Then, do you want to be a warrior in the future or just an ordinary person?" With Tyrant's ability, he could easily make arrangements for Chinyener. If Chinyener wanted to be an ordinary person, Tyrant could give her a large sum of money and let her live a life of luxury. If Chinyener wanted to be a warrior, Tyrant could also make arrangements for her. However, how far she could go in the end would depend on her own ability. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 24-27. The death of her parents was a huge blow to Chinyener. Therefore, after hearing what the monk said, Chinyener gritted her teeth and asked fearfully, "Can I?" The death of her parents was a huge blow to Chinyener. Therefore, after hearing what the monk said, Chinyener gritted her teeth and asked fearfully, "Can I?" Although there was no direct answer, everyone already knew what Chinyener meant. She wanted to cultivate and become a warrior. To Chinyener, who grew up in a village, a warrior was a lofty existence. She had never thought that she could become a warrior one day. However, after experiencing this incident, she wanted to become stronger so that she could at least protect herself. However, Chinyener was an ordinary girl after all. She naturally didn't have much confidence in becoming a warrior. Tyrant laughed heartily and said, "Ha, don't worry. Anything is possible as long as you want it." Since it was Taoist priest who rescued Chinyener, he naturally wouldn't abandon her. After Chinyener agreed, Tyrant and Taoist priest decided to bring her back to Cloud Palace. Anyway, given the strength of Cloud Palace, it wouldn't be a problem for them to nurture her. After settling the matter, everyone was ready to leave after eating and drinking. At the same time, it was already dusk outside Myriad Mountain City. However, there was indeed a luxurious carriage descending from the sky. 4 white horses pulled the carriage and galloped through the air before landing steadily outside Myriad Mountain City. As the carriage landed, a majestic middle-aged man strode down from the carriage. Upon seeing the middle-aged man, a guard of Myriad Mountain City who had been waiting for a long time greeted him respectfully. "Greetings, Your Highness." The man was the Western Garrison Lord of Lin Country. He was definitely a figure with real power in Lin Country. His cultivation base had also reached the immortal Emperor realm. He nodded calmly and asked faintly, "Where is he?" "Your Highness, he's still in the city," the guard replied respectfully. The Western Garrison Lord had personally come to Myriad Mountain City because of Yan He. Yan He wasn't just the city lord of Myriad Mountain City, he was also the nephew of the Western Garrison Lord. It was also because of this that Yan He, who was only the governor of Wanshan City, dared to be so unscrupulous. Knowing that Yan He had been killed, the Western Garrison Liege Lord immediately rushed over. Following the arrival of the Western Garrison Liege Lord, the guards of the Wanshan City also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. With the Liege Lord personally overseeing the city, they wanted to see what the foreign brats could do. With that, the Western Garrison Liege Lord took the lead and walked into the city, followed closely by a troop of over 1,000 city guards. In the city, the citizens of Wanshan City naturally avoided the Western Garrison Liege Lord when they saw him striding over. Outside the restaurant, Xiaochen and the others, who had just finished their meal, walked out of the restaurant and saw the Western Garrison Liege Lord leading his men. Both sides met directly. Looking at the aggressive Lord Jinshi, the monk smiled and said to the Taoist, "You really poked a hornet's nest." Needless to say, this person was definitely here to avenge Yan He. He had just killed Yan He and this person had come. Who would believe that it wasn't because of Yan He? Upon hearing the monk's words, the Taoist smiled indifferently and said, "It's just some small trouble. How can it be considered a hornet's nest?" While they were talking, they didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. Even when the Western Garrison Liege Lord arrived in front of them, the monk and the Taoist were still calm. The Western Garrison Liege Lord furrowed his brows when he saw the unchanging expressions of the crowd. Then, he asked with an icy expression, "Are you the ones who killed Yan He?" So what if we are? These words came from Xiaochen. To be honest, Xiaochen didn't put a puny immortal emperor realm cultivator in his eyes. Xiaochen wasn't afraid at all when he saw through the Western Garrison Liege Lord's cultivation base. However, the Western Garrison Liege Lord was infuriated. The guard beside him also shouted angrily, "How dare you disrespect the Liege Lord? I think you are courting death." Liege Lord? This identity was indeed very honorable in the spiritual fruit world. However, it was nothing in the eyes of Xiaochen and the others. Given the cultivation base of Xiaochen and the others, they were no longer interested in the power and influence of the secular world. Although the Lin country seemed to be unparalleled, Xiaochen and the others could destroy it with a flip of their hand. Therefore, they naturally didn't value the Liege Lord. Not to mention a Liege Lord, even the Emperor of the Lin country was nothing in the eyes of Xiaochen and the others. After knowing the identity of the Western Garrison Liege Lord, they thought that Xiaochen and the others would be fearful. Unfortunately, Xiaochen and the others were still unmoved. Xiaochen said indifferently, "You are here for the matter of Yanhe, right? That man deserves to be killed. That's all. You can leave now." Xiaochen wasn't interested in these ants. However, there were always some people who were seeking death in this world. Originally, Xiaochen didn't want to lower himself to the same level as these people. However, after hearing Xiaochen's words, the Western Garrison Liege Lord shouted coldly, "Deserve to be killed? So, if I kill you now, it's also my right to kill you?" The attitude of Xiaochen and the others made the Western Garrison Liege Lord even angrier. With his status, people would be respectful and reverent wherever he went. However, Xiaochen and the others only looked at him with indifference. It was like a giant looking at an ant. Following the words of the Western Garrison Liege Lord, thousands of city guards immediately surrounded Xiaochen and the others. Being surrounded, Xiaochen's eyes were cold. He didn't want to argue with these ants, but they didn't know what was good for them. Xiaochen was indeed not a murderous person, nor was he a person who liked to bully the weak. He was also not a person who liked to argue with ants. However, even if Xiaochen wasn't such a person, with Xiaochen's cultivation, status, how could he allow these ants to provoke him? Immediately, Xiaochen turned his head to look at the Western Garrison Liege Lord and said indifferently, "Are you sure you want to do this? Do you know the consequences?" "Consequences? Haha, ignorant brat, you dare to talk to me about consequences? This is simply the biggest joke in the world." The Western Garrison Liege Lord laughed loudly. The Western Garrison Liege Lord didn't take Xiaochen seriously at all. Facing this, Xiaochen's expression didn't change. He said indifferently, "It seems that the Lin Kingdom can be destroyed." With a single sentence, Xiaochen wanted to destroy the Lin Kingdom. Hearing this, the Western Garrison Liege Lord's expression darkened. However, this time, before he could say anything, Xiaochen spoke first. "Wang Songxue, Sect Master." Hearing Xiaochen's words, Wang Songxue cupped his hands and replied. As his voice fell, a soaring aura exploded from Wang Songshua's body. As soon as the aura of the End Realm appeared, it instantly made the Western Garrison Liege Lord and the others feel like ducks that were being strangled by their necks. Their faces instantly turned ugly. Just the aura alone made it difficult for the Western Garrison Liege Lord and the others to breathe. And this was the result of Wang Songxue not targeting them. As long as Wang Songxue wanted, just the pressure of the End Realm alone was enough to crush the Western Garrison Liege Lord and the others to death. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 24-28. Wang Xuesong's End Realm cultivation erupted. Facing the aura emitted from Wang Xuesong's body, the expression of Lord Jinshi and the others changed drastically. Previously, they didn't see through the cultivation realm of Xiaochen's group. However, as Wang Xuesong's aura erupted, they understood that Xiaochen's group was an existence they couldn't afford to offend. Wang Xuesong's End Realm cultivation erupted. Facing the aura emitted from Wang Xuesong's body, the expression of Lord Jinshi and the others changed drastically. Previously, they didn't see through the cultivation realm of Xiao Chen's group. However, as Wang Xuesong's aura erupted, they understood that Xiao Chen's group was an existence they couldn't afford to offend. With a pale face, the Western Garrison Liege Lord wanted to beg for mercy, but Wang Xuesong obviously didn't give him the chance. A terrifying pressure instantly descended from Wang Xuesong's body. In an instant, the Western Garrison Liege Lord and the others were directly pressed to the ground. There seemed to be wounds on his body that were suppressing him. Blood spurted out from the corners of his eyes and nostrils. Bearing the enormous pressure, Lord Jinshi gritted his teeth and said, "Senior, spare my life." Lord Jinshi begged for mercy. However, before he could finish his words, he was crushed into a meat patty by Wang Xuesong's terrifying aura. Wang Xuesong didn't hold back at all. Xiao Chen's meaning was clear. Xiao Chen had completely lost his patience with these two groups of ants that provoked him. In an instant, Lord Jinshi and the others were all killed. Lord Jinshi's death in Wanshan City was definitely a shocking matter for the Lin country. After all, Lord Jinshi wasn't only one of the few immortal emperor experts in the Lin country, he was also the younger brother of the current Lin country's emperor. However, Xiao Chen didn't care about this at all. Moreover, was it enough to just kill Lord Jinshi? Don't forget that Xiao Chen had already said that there was no need for the Lin country to exist. "Master, Taoist, can you accompany me to the imperial capital?" After Wang Xuesong killed Western Garrison Liege and the others, Xiao Chen asked the monk and Taoist with a smile. The monk and the Taoist priest naturally understood why Xiao Chen wanted to go to the imperial capital. They didn't refuse and nodded lightly. "It's fine. This lingua is indeed annoying." The monk and the Taoist priest were not ordinary monks. Although one of them was a monk and the other was a Taoist priest, the blood on their hands was probably no less than that of Xiao Chen. He planned to take a detour to the imperial capital and destroy the Lin kingdom. Hearing the conversation between Xiao Chen and the monk, Chen Yen'er had a complicated look in her eyes. Seeing Wang Xuesong kill the high and mighty Western Garrison Liege in an instant without even moving a finger, Chen Yen'er thought that Western Garrison Liege was already a top figure. However, such a big figure was still squashed to death like an ant. Unconsciously, a desire for power arose in her heart. Chen Yen'er wanted to be like Wang Xuesong, who had the ability to control her own fate. She also wanted to be like Xiao Chen, who could decide the life and death of others with a single word. However, it might be difficult for Chen Yen'er to realize this dream in her lifetime. With her talent, not to mention Xiao Chen, even Wang Xuesong would find it difficult to achieve it. After all, Chen Yen'er wasn't a genius with incredible talent. The monk and the Taoist priest were willing to help her only because of fate. Under normal circumstances, Chen Yen'er would probably be an ordinary disciple of the Cloud Palace in the future. There wouldn't be anything special about her. However, even so, it was enough for Chen Yen'er. At least she could control her own fate and wouldn't be as powerless as she was now. Xiao Chen and the others naturally didn't know what Chen Yen'er was thinking. At this time, Xiao Chen directly took out the spatial spirit boat. Everyone boarded the boat and then disappeared into the sky. "Brother Xiao Chen, your spatial spirit boat is pretty good." In the cabin, everyone sat together, and the Taoist priest said with a smile. In response, Xiao Chen smiled and didn't say anything. Xiao Chen and the others hurried to the imperial capital of the Lin kingdom. At the same time, the news that Western Garrison Liege was killed in the Wanshan city was immediately known by the emperor of the Lin kingdom. As the Western Garrison Liege of the Lin kingdom and a member of the royal family, he naturally had his own life token in the imperial palace. Therefore, as soon as Western Garrison Liege was killed, the emperor of the Lin kingdom already knew. At this time, in a palace in the imperial palace, the emperor of the Lin kingdom, who was wearing a dragon robe, said to a general with a gloomy face. Who killed Western Garrison Liege? I'm going to kill all 9 generations of his family." The emperor of the Lin country and the Western Garrison Lord were blood brothers. The relationship between the two of them was extremely good. The death of the Western Garrison Lord had indeed infuriated the emperor. In the face of the emperor's fury, the general below spoke carefully. Your Majesty, Western Garrison Liege was killed in the Wanshan city. It is said that he was killed by several mysterious experts. They shouldn't be warriors from the Lin Kingdom. The Lin Kingdom's royal family's speed was not slow. They had already figured out the ins and outs of the matter so quickly. However, this was also very normal. If they could not even do this, then how could the Lin Kingdom's royal family control such a huge country? However, that was all the information that the Lin Kingdom's royal family had. As for the identity and cultivation of Xiao Chen and the others, the Lin Kingdom's royal family knew nothing about them. Hearing the general's words, the emperor of the Lin Kingdom's eyes flashed with coldness. Then, he said coldly, find them. Find them at all costs. I want to see them alive and dead. The emperor of the Lin Kingdom directly ordered the capture of Xiao Chen and the others. Hearing this, the general also responded respectfully, yes. As the general left the main hall, the coldness in the emperor of the Lin Kingdom's eyes did not disappear. However, he was no longer angry. According to the information that he had, the other party killed Western Garrison Liege in an instant. It seemed that their strength was not weak. After all, Western Garrison Liege was an immortal emperor. To be able to kill him in an instant, one had to be at least a great perfection immortal emperor. Although he had already realized that Xiao Chen and the others were not weak, the emperor of the Lin Kingdom still insisted on avenging Western Garrison Liege. It was not for any other reason but because the Lin Kingdom had its own confidence. Although an immortal emperor was considered an expert in the Lin Kingdom, it was definitely not the top. On the surface, the strongest expert in the Lin Kingdom was already an immortal emperor. But in the dark, didn't the Lin Kingdom have its own strength? This was obviously impossible. Therefore, a group of suspected immortal emperor experts was not enough to make the Lin Kingdom fearful. Do you think you can behave atrociously in my Lin Kingdom just because you are an immortal emperor? Humph. The emperor of the Lin Kingdom snorted coldly and murmured in a deep voice. He only guessed that Xiao Chen and the others were in the immortal emperor realm. However, the emperor of the Lin Kingdom obviously did not realize that the Lin Kingdom was facing an imminent disaster. It was not whether the emperor wanted to arrest Xiao Chen and the others. Instead, it was because Xiao Chen and the others were on their way to the imperial capital. As for the purpose of going to the imperial capital, it was needless to say. A disaster was about to befall. It was ridiculous that the emperor of the Lin Kingdom was still unaware of it. Seeking collection, monthly vote, recommendation. Chapter 24-29. Following the order of the Emperor of Lin Country, many experts of Lin Country quickly moved out and joined in the search for Xiao Chen and his group. The Emperor said that he wanted to see them if they were alive and their corpses if they were dead, regardless of whether they were dead or alive. In an instant, many experts of Lin Country and even the army joined in the search for Xiao Chen and his group. As for Xiao Chen and his group, they didn't intend to hide in the face of the Lin Country's arrest. They swaggered towards the imperial capital of Lin Country. As such, it was easy for the Lin Country to find the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and his group. In a short day, Xiao Chen and his group encountered 6 or 7 encirclements. However, facing these experts of Lin Country, Xiao Chen didn't even need to do anything. Wang Songxue, Li Ku, and the rest were more than enough to deal with them. For a small Lin Country, not to mention an End Realm expert, even a Dao Realm expert would be hard for the Lin Country to deal with. Although such an ordinary encirclement didn't pose any threat to Xiao Chen and his group, it was still a little annoying. Even Monk said helplessly, the royal family of Lin Country is probably stupid. They were clearly ants, but they didn't know how to respect them at all. They even dared to send people to encircle and kill Xiao Chen and his group without knowing anything about them. Weren't they afraid of bringing disaster to the Lin Country? Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled and didn't say anything. What was the best way to deal with an ant jumping around in front of you? Naturally, it was to kill it with a slap. Since the royal family of Lin Country wanted to die, Xiao Chen would fulfill their wish. Just as the few of them were talking, on the deck, Li Ku, Wang Songxue, and the other two End Realm experts looked at the 100,000-strong army of Lin country that appeared in front of them. Obviously, this army had figured out the route of Xiao Chen and his group and had been waiting here for a long time. Sending out 100,000-strong army to kill Xiao Chen and his group? The emperor of the Lin country was indeed stubborn. Seeing the situation, Li Ku came to the cabin and said respectfully to Xiao Chen, "Sect Master, there are 100,000 soldiers of the Lin country ahead. What do you think of us?" What Li Ku meant was to ask Xiao Chen if they needed to take a detour. Although 100,000 soldiers were a lot, they definitely wouldn't be able to catch up with the spatial spirit boat. However, Xiao Chen indifferently said, "Just destroy them." There must be something wrong with the emperor of the Lin country. After so many people died, he still didn't give up. He even dared to send 100,000 soldiers to kill him. Did he think that he didn't dare to kill? Or did he think that he was a good person? The strong might not care about the provocation of the weak. However, if the provocation came again and again, it would definitely lead to self-destruction, just like the current emperor of the country of Lin. Kill this army of 100,000. Hearing Xiao Chen's question, Li Ku did not say much. He nodded respectfully and then strode out of the cabin. Xiao Chen didn't know that the 100,000 soldiers in front of him were the most elite army of the country of Lin. They were all made up of warriors. Moreover, the commander of this army was an expert of the perfection immoral emperor realm. This army could be said to be the foundation of the country of Lin. One could imagine how angry the emperor of the country of Lin was to have sent out such an army. Seeing the spatial spirit boat getting closer and closer, a middle-aged burly man stood at the front of the army with a dignified expression. His eyes were filled with coldness. This man was the commander of this army, an expert of the immoral emperor realm. When he heard that the emperor had mobilized 100,000 soldiers to kill a few foreign warriors, the commander snorted disdainfully. He only thought that it was a waste of talent to kill a chicken with a sledgehammer. Until now, the commander still had the same thought. It's just a few foreign warriors. His Majesty actually mobilized the Tianlin army. He thinks too highly of them. Seeing the spatial spirit boat getting closer and closer, the commander snorted coldly. However, just as he finished speaking, 4 figures jumped out from the spatial spirit boat and instantly appeared in the sky above the Tianlin army. The people who came were none other than Li Ku and the other 3. Xiao Chen had already ordered the slaughter of the Tianlin army. Naturally, Li Ku and the other 3 didn't hesitate at all. They didn't speak any nonsense and directly attacked. The 4 Dan and realm experts released their auras at the same time. In an instant, a terrifying aura suddenly descended from the sky. Feeling this terrifying aura, the face of the Tianlin army commander, who was previously arrogant, suddenly changed. They weren't at the Celestial Emperor realm. This group of foreign warriors weren't at the Celestial Emperor realm at all. However, before the commander could speak, the aura instantly increased. In an instant, the 100,000 Tianlin army soldiers were directly crushed. Countless people were directly crushed and turned into a bloody mist. Just the aura alone made the Tianlin army unable to fight back. To an End Realm expert, 100,000 soldiers were like floating clouds. If they couldn't even withstand the aura, how could they pose a threat to an End Realm expert? This was also the reason why in the battle between good and evil in the Great Thousand World, regardless of whether it was the side of the Great Thousand World or the evil path, the participants of the battle were at least at the Immortal Emperor realm. This was because the cultivators below that level weren't even qualified to enter the battlefield. The 100,000 Tianlin army, the strongest army of the Lin country, was completely wiped out in just a dozen breaths of time. Only a few generals were still bitterly holding on. However, such persistence was of no use to Li Ku and the other 3. In front of 4 End Realm experts, the 100,000 Tianlin army soldiers couldn't even withstand a single blow. Before dying, the Tianlin army commander's expression suddenly changed as he muttered, "It's over, Your Majesty. The Lin country is finished, there was definitely a huge mistake in the judgment of the Lin Country Emperor. This group of foreign warriors weren't at the Celestial Emperor realm at all. They were existences that far surpassed the Celestial Emperor realm. Even if the Lin Country still had some trump cards, they were far from enough in front of these people. 100,000 Tianlin army soldiers were almost wiped out in the blink of an eye. This was definitely a disaster for the Lin Country. It didn't take much time for Li Ku and the other three to completely wipe out the Tianlin army, including the generals and the commander of the Tianlin army. All of them were dead. Xiao Chen and the others continued to advance towards the imperial capital. At the same time, the news of the Tianlin army being wiped out immediately reached the emperor of the Lin Country. In the imperial palace, the emperor of the Lin Country was sitting in the main hall. When he heard that the Tianlin army had been wiped out and no one was left alive, his face was blank. He seemed to have lost his soul as he kept muttering to himself. How could this be? How could this be? 100,000 Tianlin army soldiers were wiped out in an instant. How could the emperor of the Lin Country not know what this meant? He was wrong. Moreover, he had brought disaster to the Lin Country. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 24:30. 100,000 Sky Forest army soldiers were slaughtered, which made the emperor of Lin Country feel a chill down his spine. Moreover, the most important thing was that all 100,000 Sky Forest army soldiers were slaughtered in an instant. What did this mean? It meant that the Sky Forest army of Lin Country didn't even have the strength to fight back in front of this group of mysterious foreign warriors. 100,000 Sky Forest army soldiers were slaughtered, which made the emperor of Lin Country feel a chill down his spine. Moreover, the most important thing was that all 100,000 Sky Forest army soldiers were slaughtered in an instant. What did this mean? It meant that the Sky Forest army of Lin Country didn't even have the strength to fight back in front of this group of mysterious foreign warriors. However, the emperor of the Lin Country did not know that only Li Ku, Wang Songxue, and the other three had taken action. Xiao Chen and the rest had not taken action yet. If he knew about this, the emperor of the Lin Country's expression would be even more interesting. Even if he did not know about this, the emperor of the Lin Country was already terrified. The strength of this group of foreign cultivators was far beyond his imagination. Immediately, the emperor of the Lin Country did not care about anything else and rushed straight into the depths of the palace. The Lin Country had been established for many years, so naturally, it had its own foundation. In the depths of the palace, the emperor of the Lin Country hurriedly pushed open the door and entered. This palace was the residence of the old ancestor of the Lin Country's imperial family. Every emperor of the Lin Country would abdicate once his cultivation broke through to the immortal emperor realm. Then, he would seclude himself in this palace to cultivate. This was the foundation of the Lin Country's imperial family. Under normal circumstances, unless it was a major event that could shake the foundation of the country, the current emperor would not disturb his own old ancestor. However, at this moment, the emperor of the Lin Country could not care less about this. He hurriedly pushed open the door and entered. Then, he knelt on the ground and said, "Old ancestor, please save my life." Along with the emperor's words, a hoarse voice rang out in the main hall. "What's the matter?" All along, only the emperor could enter this palace. Others could not even get close to it, let alone enter it. As soon as he finished speaking, 7 young and old men dressed in coarse linen clothes appeared one after another. Among these people, there were both young and old. Without exception, all of their cultivations had surpassed the Celestial Emperor realm. Among the 7 people, one of them was the current emperor's father. Looking at his son kneeling on the ground, an elegant middle-aged man said, "Ming'er, what is it?" "Father." Looking at his father, the emperor was taken aback. Then, he knelt and pleaded. "My country of Lin is facing a great calamity. I hope that father and patriarchs can lend a hand." Impending disaster? Hearing this, the expressions of the 7 people present darkened. They knew that the emperor would not joke about something like this. Furthermore, unless there was something that could shake the foundation of the country, the emperor would not personally come here. After all, these old ancestors no longer cared about worldly affairs. In fact, very few people in the world knew of their existence. After all, every emperor would announce his death to the outside world when he abdicated. This was because this was the only way for the new emperor to have a better control over the court. Otherwise, a country with 2 emperors, or even several emperors, would obviously be detrimental to the stability of the country. Therefore, in the eyes of outsiders, these old fellows no longer existed. As such, these old fellows would only take action when it was truly a matter of life and death. Facing the inquiry of the patriarchs, the emperor of the country of Lin did not dare to hide anything. He immediately recounted the matter of the Wanshan city, the western garrison liege lord, and the massacre of 100,000 Sky Forest army. Upon hearing the emperor's words, one of the old men with white hair and beard immediately shouted angrily, "Stupid! As the ruler of a country, how can you be so stupid? You don't even know the strength of the other party and you dare to give the order to hunt them down?" The matter of the Wanshan city and the western garrison liege lord could not be blamed on the emperor. However, the massacre of 100,000 Sky Forest army was caused by the emperor's stupidity. To be able to slaughter 100,000 Sky Forest army in an instant, one could imagine how powerful the other party's cultivation was. If the emperor had calmed down and figured out the other party's strength, things would not have turned out this way. There might even be room for negotiation. After all, the western garrison liege lord could not represent the entire royal family of the country of Lin. However, the emperor was different. If the emperor did not give the order to hunt them down, then the matter of the Wanshan city would be the western garrison liege lord's own business. At that time, even if the other party came to the imperial capital to demand an explanation, he could still deal with them. However, since the emperor had given the order to hunt them down, it meant that this matter was no longer the western garrison liege lord's own business, but the entire royal family of the country of Lin. It was obvious that the other party was not to be trifled with. His strength had exceeded the emperor's expectations. Therefore, the patriarch could not help but curse. The emperor of the country of Lin did not dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction after being scolded by his own patriarch. Although he was the emperor, it was only the royal family's facade. Although the affairs of the country of Lin were usually handled by the emperor, it was not difficult to change the emperor if he angered these old men. In a martial artist's strength was always above authority. If one had strength, they would have authority. On the other hand, if one had authority but no strength, it would be like a castle in the air, extremely illusory and could collapse at any time. Therefore, a true powerhouse would never care about the full strength of the secular world. Emperors and princes were nothing in the eyes of a true powerhouse. Even if they did not make a move, it would not take long for them to turn into a pile of yellow soil. After kneeling respectfully in front of the patriarchs and scolding them, another patriarch said, "It's useless to say anything now. Judging from the other party's appearance, they are heading straight for the imperial capital. Let's think about how to deal with them now. Forget it. Since the other party is here, we will come forward. You don't have to worry about this matter." After hearing the patriarch's words, one of them finally spoke. The matter had exceeded the emperor's ability. Hearing the patriarch's words, the emperor breathed a sigh of relief. In the face of such a powerhouse, he could only leave it to the patriarch to deal with. One had to know that people at the level of the patriarch could no longer be resisted by numbers. Therefore, in the face of such a powerhouse, it was still necessary to have a powerhouse of the same level to come forward. However, the emperor of the country of Lin still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. He thought that by asking his patriarch to come forward, he should be able to resolve this matter smoothly. Little did he know that in the eyes of Xiao Chen and the others, the patriarchs of the country of Lin's imperial family were not worth mentioning at all. Although the 7 patriarchs of the Lin family were existences whose cultivation had surpassed the immortal emperor realm, they had only reached the enlightenment realm. The strongest one was only a half-step to the Tao realm and had not truly broken through to the Tao realm. With such cultivation, they were indeed considered godlike existences in the country of Lin. However, in front of Xiaochen and the others, they were still too weak. Until now, the emperor of the country of Lin still did not know what kind of existence he had provoked. Even the patriarchs were the same. They were still holding on to the illusion that as long as they came forward, they should be able to resolve this matter. It was laughable that they did not know how naive their thoughts were. Seeking collection, monthly votes, recommendations. Chapter 2431. The imperial family of the Lin country was still arrogant. Little did they know that their insignificant strength was never in Xiaochen's eyes. Destroying the imperial family of the Lin country was just a piece of cake for Xiaochen and his group. After receiving the reply from his old ancestor, the emperor of the Lin country left in a good mood. In his opinion, with his old ancestor taking action, there was no need to worry about this matter anymore. No matter how strong that group of foreign warriors was, could they be stronger than his old ancestor? The emperor of the Lin country thought that he only needed to wait for his old ancestor to come out and solve this problem. Little did he know that the imperial family of the Lin country was already facing a great disaster. In less than a day, Xiaochen and his group arrived at the imperial capital of the Lin country. For the warriors of the Lin country, the imperial capital was definitely the most prosperous and majestic city. However, for Xiaochen and his group, the imperial capital of the Lin country was nothing special at all. Xiaochen and his group had seen many cities that were more prosperous and majestic than the imperial capital. Therefore, for the imperial capital of the Lin country, Xiaochen and his group didn't feel anything at all. The spatial spirit ship stopped steadily in the sky above the imperial capital. Suddenly, they saw a starship-like spatial spirit ship appear in the sky above the imperial capital. Many warriors of the imperial capital were stunned. One had to know that flying was prohibited in the imperial capital because it was disrespectful to the imperial family. Even if an immortal emperor realm expert came to the imperial capital, they had to enter through the city gate step by step. Many warriors in the imperial capital had the same thought. However, Xiaochen and his group didn't care at all. Standing on the deck and looking at the imperial capital in front of them, Xiaochen said indifferently, "Hurry up." Xiaochen didn't have any intention to destroy the imperial family of the Lin country. Similarly, the monk and Taoist were the same. Hearing Xiaochen's words, Li Ku, Wang Xuesong, and the other End Realm experts nodded respectfully. Then, Wang Xuesong and the other 5 stepped out of the spatial spirit ship and stood proudly in the air. Then, a voice mixed with spiritual energy came out of Wang Xuesong's mouth and instantly spread through the streets and alleys of the imperial capital. Today, the imperial family of the Lin country will be destroyed. Annihilate the royal family of Lin country? Hearing this, many warriors in the imperial capital were stunned. These people were too arrogant. Not only did they swagger into the imperial capital, they even wanted to destroy the imperial family of the Lin kingdom. However, as Wang Xuesong's words rang out, several powerful auras erupted from within the imperial city. Although these auras were powerful in the eyes of the imperial city's cultivators, in the eyes of Wang Xuesong and the rest, they were unable to withstand a single blow. Almost all of them were at the immortal king realm. Such a cultivation base was simply too weak to be any weaker. Then, the ministers and experts of Lin country appeared in front of Wang Xuesong and the others. Their leader was an old man at the immortal emperor realm. He looked coldly at Wang Xuesong and the others and shouted in a deep voice. "Who are you? How dare you speak such arrogant words?" The old man was the current prime minister of Lin country. As the prime minister of Lin country, he naturally couldn't remain indifferent when he heard that someone dared to say that they wanted to destroy the imperial family of Lin country. Cold light flashed in his eyes and killing intent gathered. However, Wang Xuesong didn't pay any attention to the old man's angry shout. He pointed out a finger and killed the old man on the spot. As an immortal emperor realm expert, the Prime Minister of Lin Country was killed by Wang Xuesong with a single finger. He didn't even have the chance to react. Seeing such an outcome, all the experts of Lin Country were stunned. How could this be possible? The Prime Minister was at the Immortal Emperor realm. How could he be killed so easily? It didn't make sense at all. They didn't expect things to turn out like this. Wang Xuesong ignored the shock of the crowd and spoke again. Why? Are the people of the imperial family all cowards? As he spoke, Wang Xuesong pointed his finger again, but this time, he pointed in the direction of the imperial palace. As he pointed, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in. More than half of the imperial palace was destroyed in an instant, and the other places were also ruined by the aftermath. Wang Xuesong didn't mean anything to these ministers of Lin Country. He didn't want to kill them. The reason he killed the Prime Minister was just to tell them to keep their eyes open. Sure enough, in the face of the current situation, these ministers fell into silence. They no longer had the coldness from before. On the contrary, each and every one of them was terrified. They even subconsciously widened the gap between them and Wang Xuesong. Xiao Chen and the others had arrived at the imperial capital. Wang Xuesong had killed the Prime Minister and destroyed more than half of the imperial palace with a single finger. While everyone was still in shock, the 7 old ancestors of Lin Country finally showed themselves. Looking at the 7 old ancestors of the imperial family in the sky, the experts of Lin Country were stunned. Then, they murmured in disbelief, "How is this possible, Your Majesty? Aren't they the previous emperors of Lin Country? Weren't they all rumored to have passed away? How is it that they are all alive and well?" These ministers were all important ministers of Lin Country. However, they still didn't know some of the secrets of the imperial family. After all, they were promoted by the current emperor. As the saying goes, a new emperor brings in new ministers. When a new emperor ascends the throne, he naturally has to promote his trusted subordinates. As the emperors who were supposed to be dead showed up one after another, the ministers were stunned on the spot. It was especially so when they saw the elderly man in the middle. One of them exclaimed as though they had seen a ghost. Emperor Gaozu. Emperor Gaozu was the founding emperor of Lin Country. It had been at least several thousand years. How is he still alive? Everyone was shocked, but Wang Xuesong was very calm. Looking at the 7 people in front of him, Wang Xuesong saw through their cultivation base at a glance. They were all in the enlightenment realm. The strongest among them was only half a step into the Tao realm. Such a cultivation base was indeed not enough. Is this the foundation of your imperial family? Wang Xuesong said indifferently as his gaze fell on the old man in the middle. He was Emperor Gaozu of Lin Country, and also the one with the highest cultivation base among the 7, half a step into the Tao realm. 7 Enlightenment realm cultivators. This was the foundation of the imperial family. However, Wang Xuesong's expression was still calm. It was as if these 7 people were nothing in his eyes. Looking at Wang Xuesong's indifferent expression and calm tone, Emperor Gaozu respectfully cupped his hands and bowed. "Senior, this is actually a complete misunderstanding. What happened in the 10,000 Mountain City was all done by Lord Jinshi himself. Senior, I hope that you can understand this. Our royal family is willing to compensate you and will definitely satisfy you. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 2432. Before meeting Wang Songxue and the others, the 7 ancestors of the Lin Kingdom's imperial family thought that they could handle this matter. After all, with their cultivation, even if the foreign cultivators were powerful, they should at least give them some face. However, after seeing Wang Songxue kill the Prime Minister and destroy half of the imperial palace with a finger, the 7 ancestors completely lost their temper. Although they still couldn't see through Wang Songxue's cultivation, as long as they weren't stupid, they could guess that Wang Songxue's strength would definitely crush the 7 of them. For a moment, the 7 ancestors couldn't help but curse the emperor in their hearts. What kind of enemy did he provoke for the Lin Kingdom? Did he want to personally destroy the Lin kingdom? The arrogance in their hearts had long disappeared. At this moment, the 7 ancestors were only thinking about how to appease Wang Songxue and settle this matter as soon as possible. In front of Wang Songxue, the 7 ancestors were very clear that the Lin kingdom didn't have the ability to contend with him. For an expert at Wang Songxue's level, if he wanted to destroy the Lin kingdom, it would be too easy. Even the entire Lin kingdom's strength wouldn't be able to stop Wang Songxue and the others. They couldn't even muster the slightest bit of resistance. In the face of the 7 ancestors of the Lin kingdom's humble attitude, Wang Songxue turned his head and glanced at Xiaochen behind him. However, Xiaochen didn't say anything about it. Now, he wanted to compensate? How could it be so simple? Moreover, how could Xiaochen be satisfied with the compensation that Lin Gui had given him? To put it bluntly, even if Xiaochen searched the entire Lin kingdom's treasury, there probably wouldn't be many things that could catch Xiaochen's eye. In Xiaochen's eyes, a small country that was so small that it could not even be laughed at was dreaming if it wanted to write off what had happened before with just a word of compensation. When Wang Xuesong turned his head, the 7 ancestors naturally saw him. Soon, the 7 of them reacted. Wang Xuesong before them wasn't someone who could make the decision. In an instant, the 7 of them respectfully bowed to the spatial spirit ship that Xiaochen and the others were on. I hope that Senior can be magnanimous. We will definitely not offend Senior's dignity in the future. The people on the spatial spirit boat were the ones who could make the decisions. The 7 patriarchs quickly realized this. Without Xiaochen's approval, Wang Songxue didn't dare to make a move. Whether the royal family of the Lin kingdom survived or perished depended on Xiaochen's decision. Xiaochen looked at the 7 great ancestors indifferently as they saluted him. However, before Xiaochen could say anything, a spatial crack tore open on the spot without any warning. Then, a terrifying pressure spread out from it. This pressure caused Xiaochen's heart to palpitate. This was a feeling of dread that came from the bottom of his heart. He couldn't even muster up the slightest intention of resisting. An expert who had surpassed the sovereign realm. The old man was definitely an expert who had surpassed the sovereign realm. At the same time, Tyrant and Taoist sensed the aura and instantly appeared on the deck. Looking at the black hole in front of them, Tyrant and Taoist sneered. These dogs, they even want to care about such a small matter? It wasn't hard to tell from Tyrant and Taoist's words that they knew the identity of the person who had come. At the same time, in order to prevent Xiaochen and the others from falling into their hands, Tyrant and Taoist blocked Xiaochen and the others behind them. However, Wang Xuesong and the others weren't so lucky. This pressure was obviously aimed at them. Immediately, Wang Xuesong and the others were sent flying. They all spat out a mouthful of blood. Just his aura alone was able to injure 6 End Realm experts. Was this an existence who had surpassed the sovereign realm? Seeing that Wang Xuesong and the others couldn't even resist the other party's aura, Xiaochen was shocked. Tyrant and Taoist were existences who had surpassed the sovereign realm. However, the 2 of them had never revealed their aura. This was also the first time Xiaochen saw how terrifying an expert who had surpassed the sovereign realm and reached the ancestor realm was. Under everyone's gaze, 2 middle-aged men in white robes slowly walked out of the spatial crack. The 2 of them had dignified appearances and gave off an indescribable feeling. Tyrant and Taoist, have you forgotten the agreement? Cloud Palace is not allowed to attack the forces of the Hongmeng world. As soon as the 2 of them appeared, one of them directly looked at Tyrant and Taoist and said. As for Xiaochen and the others, they were directly ignored by the 2 of them. A group of ants who hadn't even broken through the sovereign realm didn't know that the 2 of them were paying attention to them. They didn't know who the 2 of them were. However, after hearing this, Taoist smiled slightly and said, Your immortal palace is really nosy. We naturally won't attack for no reason. This Lin country is just seeking its own destruction. The Taoist priest refused to back down. Beside him, the tyrant monk whispered to Xiaochen. These guys are from Immortal Palace. All of them are overflowing with Taoist appearances. There's no need for you to get involved. Just leave it to us. Xiaochen naturally didn't know much about Immoral Palace. However, one thing was enough to prove Immoral Palace's strength. Immoral Palace was a sect founded by the World Master of the Hongmeng world. It was fully deserving of its title as the Overlord of the Hongmeng world. Even the Tenzu of the Hongmeng world didn't dare to disobey Immoral Palace. Cloud Palace was a sect founded by the World Master of the Hongmeng world. It was in existence on the same level as Immoral Palace. Therefore, Immoral Palace paid special attention to Cloud Palace when they came to the Hongmeng world this time. However, Cloud Palace claimed that they came to the Hongmeng world for a friendly exchange and didn't have any hostility towards the Hongmeng world. Moreover, Immoral Palace and Cloud Palace were equal in strength. Under the premise that there was no irreconcilable conflict, it was obvious that they wouldn't casually start a war. Therefore, Immoral Palace played the role of a host and warmly received Cloud Palace's people. However, Cloud Palace was the overlord of a universe after all. There were many experts in it, not to mention the higher-ups of Cloud Palace like Tyrant and Taoist. Therefore, even though Immoral Palace warmly received Cloud Palace, they had an agreement that Cloud Palace's people couldn't attack any of the Hongmeng world's forces for no reason. At the same time, Immoral Palace arranged people to keep an eye on Ancestor Realm experts like Tyrant and Taoist just in case. Of course, the person monitoring them was also an Ancestor Realm expert. There was no need to mention the strength of an Ancestor Realm expert. If an Ancestor Realm expert went crazy, it would definitely be the end of the world. Originally, this Immoral Palace expert had been secretly monitoring Tyrant and Taoist. However, he had no choice but to show himself now. Hearing Taoist's words, the person who spoke earlier snorted and said, "Humph, Taoist, don't forget where you are. This is the Hongmeng world, not the Hongmeng world's Hongmeng world. Don't forget the agreement from before and don't think that Hongmeng world is easy to bully. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation." Chapter 2433. Immoral Palace's experts were already hostile and fearful of Cloud Palace's arrival. After all, two tigers couldn't share one mountain. As the overlord-level forces of two universes, the result of a collision was obvious. It was already good enough that they didn't fight. Immoral Palace's experts were already hostile and fearful of Cloud Palace's arrival. After all, two tigers couldn't share one mountain. As the overlord-level forces of two universes, the result of a collision was obvious. It was already good enough that they didn't fight. Therefore, the relationship between Cloud Palace and Immoral Palace's experts couldn't be considered harmonious. It could even be said that both sides were opposing each other. Hearing the words of the Immoral Palace's expert, the Taoist priest sneered, while the monk beside him said, "You Immoral Palace's people talk too much nonsense. If you want to fight, then fight. Why are you wasting words here?" The monk also looked down on these Immoral Palace's experts. Hearing this, the faces of the two Immoral Palace's experts sank. Then, a power that surpassed the Emperor realm erupted from their bodies. The strongest existences in the Great Thousand World were Emperor realm experts. However, in the Hongmeng world and the outside world, they were nothing. Because above the Emperor realm, there were Ancestor realm experts, and above the Ancestor realm experts, there were world lords that ruled over everything. The two Immoral Palace's experts didn't hesitate and directly chose to attack. The monk and Taoist priest didn't show any weakness and immediately retaliated. In fact, if it weren't for the suppression of the world lords, the Cloud Palace and Immoral Palace's experts would have already fought. After all, the relationship between both sides was like this, so there was nothing strange about it. The four Ancestor realm experts fought fiercely. Xiaochen and the others couldn't interfere at all. Not to mention Xiaochen, even if Junwuya and Xiatian were here, they could only watch obediently from the side. Compared to the Hongmeng world and the outside world, the development of the martial Tao and the Great Thousand World was indeed far behind. This was something that couldn't be denied. The four Ancestor experts were locked in a fierce battle. Behind Monk Jiao, there was an illusory image of Buddha that appeared solemn and dignified. This monk Jiao had cultivated the Buddhist sex cultivation technique to perfection, and it was as if a true Buddha had descended. The Taoist priest wasn't to be outdone. His aura was terrifying to the extreme. When he stretched his hand, the phantom of the three pure Taoist masters appeared. They did not hold back at all. The four of them attacked with all their might, and the surrounding space had already been sealed by the four of them. Otherwise, with the strength of the four of them, just a little bit of aftershock would have been enough to destroy the entire capital of the Lin country. Immortal Palace. The Immortal Palace. And the other forces didn't have Ancestor Realm experts, the Immortal Palaces. Immortal Emperor. The battle before them had completely exceeded the range of what the people of the Lin Kingdom could accept. Even the 7 old ancestors of the Lin Kingdom's royal family were in a daze. They had never imagined that there would be such an expert in this world. This was an existence that could shatter the galaxy. Although they couldn't feel the slightest bit of aura leaking out and couldn't even catch a glimpse of the monk, Taoist priest, and the other 3, everyone was still nervous and shocked. The palpitations that came from the bottom of their hearts were palpitating. This was a true battle between 2 powerful beings. Within the sealed space, the entire space had already collapsed completely. All sorts of laws and powerful mystic skills were unleashed one after another. Countless abnormal phenomena were intertwined, as though it was the end of the world. With the Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace's level, there was no way for them to come into contact with forces like Immortal Palace and Cloud Palace, let alone Ancestor Realm experts. Therefore, it was the first time for everyone present to see what a real expert was. What was the pinnacle of the martial Tao? Facing an Ancestor Realm expert, no one had any other thoughts. There was only deep reverence. However, there was one exception, and that was Xiao Chen. Looking at the 4 people in the fierce battle, Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with nervousness, but there was also a strong fighting spirit. This time, coming to the primordial world through the mysterious black hole could be said to have completely opened the door to a new world for Xiao Chen. It let Xiao Chen know what it meant to say that there was always someone better than him. Especially after getting to know the monk and Taoist priest, Xiao Chen knew how terrifying an Ancestor Realm expert was. If an Ancestor Realm expert entered the Great Thousand World, the entire Great Thousand World would not be able to do anything. An Ancestor Realm expert was enough to make the entire Great Thousand World helpless. With the strength of one person, he could suppress all living beings in a world. Not to mention, there was an even more powerful world lord above the Ancestor Realm expert. That was the true ruler of a universe. Xiao Chen knew that with his current strength, he was still very far from the progenitor realm, let alone the lord of a world. However, from the bottom of his heart, Xiao Chen was confident that one day, he would eventually reach this level. Moreover, after seeing the world outside the Great Thousand World and learning about the universe, Xiao Chen also had a vague goal in his heart, which was to become the world lord of the Great Thousand World. Compared to the Hongmeng world and the Great World, the vast Thousand World was now like a group of heroes fighting for supremacy. Although there was a saying that there were 10 great Ling Tian sects, no force could unify the vast Thousand World, and no one could make the heavenly ancestors submit to them. However, the primordial world and the Great World were different. Even though these 2 universes were also flourishing, there was still a mountain that was impossible to cross in front of all the powers. It was the Immortal Palace and the Cloud Palace. To the primordial world and the Great Thousand World, these 2 great forces were the kings that dominated everything. The Great Thousand World just happened to lack such a king. The king set the order, looked down on the common people, and dominated everything. At the same time, he also became the protector of the universe. The Great Thousand World did not have such a king, and similarly, the Great Thousand World did not have a protector. If the battle between good and evil broke out in the primordial world and the Great Thousand World, Xiao Chen could imagine that the evil side would not be able to stir up a single wave. Although Xiao Chen had not been to the Immortal Palace and the Cloud Palace, based on what he knew, these two great forces could definitely easily suppress the evil warriors in the Great Thousand World. A hazy feeling appeared in his heart. Xiaochen also wanted to create a force like the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace, to dominate and protect everything. His eyes were burning. Xian Yuanling, who was beside him, seemed to have sensed the change in Xiaochen and smiled. "Third brother, it seems that you have found a new target?" Xian Yuanling could guess what Xiaochen was thinking. In this regard, Xiaochen did not respond, but he did not deny it either. He had indeed found a new target, but there was still a long way to go. With the current him, not to mention the masters of the Immortal Palace and the Cloud Palace, even the monk, the Taoist priest, and Xiaochen were far inferior. However, Xiaochen believed that one day, he would definitely be on equal footing with the two masters of the Cloud Palace and the Immortal Palace. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2434. After realizing how powerful Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace were, Xiaochen had a grand ambition. One day, Xiaochen would also become an existence like Cloud Palace's master. After realizing how powerful Cloud Palace and Immortal Palace were, Xiaochen also had a grand ambition. One day, Xiaochen would also become an existence like Cloud Palace's master. However, these were all things for the future. Right now, Xiaochen was still quite a distance away from the monk and Taoist, let alone Cloud Palace's master. Putting everything else aside, Xiaochen didn't even have the qualifications to interfere in the battle between the monk, Taoist, and Immortal Palace's master. If Xiaochen wanted to be on equal footing with Cloud Palace's master, he still had a long way to go. Xiaochen calmly watched the battle. Just as the monk said, the moment Immortal Palace's expert appeared, Xiaochen could no longer resolve the situation. The battle had already reached its climax. In the midst of the battle, an expert from Immortal Palace sneered at the monk. "Monk, I've long heard that your Cloud Palace's 9 palaces have 9 great palace masters. As one of the 9 great palace masters, your strength is a bit lacking." "Ha, this poor monk's strength is insignificant to begin with. But even so, you still can't do anything to this poor monk, can you?" The monk didn't seem to mind the mockery of the expert from Immortal Palace. He put on a mocking expression. Cloud Palace was divided into 9 palaces above the clouds, and each palace had a palace master. It was said that the palace masters of the 9 palaces above the clouds were all Ancestor Realm experts. They were the 9 great pillars of the 9 palaces above the Cloud Palace's master. This little bit of provocation was naturally useless against the monk. After living for so many years, if he didn't even have this bit of shrewdness, then he might as well just bang his head against the wall and die. As soon as he finished speaking, the monk struck out with a palm. The Buddha's projection was like a giant that pressed down with a palm. Amitabha. The chanting of sutras filled the air. The expert from Immortal Palace didn't dare to be careless in the slightest in this battle with the monk. He could clearly sense a terrifying pressure pressing down on him from the palm. This monk had indeed cultivated the Buddhist techniques to the acme of perfection. This palm strike of his was filled with boundless Buddhist powers. Looking at the monk's palm strike, Xiaochen did not know how to evaluate it. It was not that there were no Buddhist experts in the Great Thousand World, and Xiaochen had come into contact with many cultivators who practiced Buddhist cultivation methods. However, compared to the monk, the powerhouses in the Great Thousand World who practiced Buddhist cultivation techniques were simply too weak. They could not be compared at all. Buddhist skills were benevolent and merciful, delivering all living beings from torment and righteousness. All of these were fully manifested on Tyrant's body. At this moment, Tyrant was truly like a living Buddha. His golden radiance was so blinding that it was hard to look at him directly. When the monk struck out with his palm, the expert from Immortal Palace was not to be outdone. Dense black light erupted from behind him. Then, he struck out with a fist. Dense ghost energy frantically spread out. The black fist and the golden palm collided fiercely. It was like the collision of light and darkness. For a moment, neither side could do anything to the other. It was a confrontation between light and evil. At the same time, the expert from Immortal Palace shouted angrily, "Monk, let me experience your Mahavairakana Sutra today." Although the experts from the sword sect had not been in the primordial world for a long time, it was not a short time either. Therefore, the expert from Immortal Palace had some understanding of Tyrant. He knew that Tyrant cultivated the Mahavairakana Sutra, one of the top Buddhist techniques in the Great Thousand World. When Tyrant first appeared in the primordial world, all the Buddhist sects in the primordial world were shaken. Even the most powerful Buddhist sect, the Heavenly Thunder Temple, personally invited Tyrant to the Heavenly Thunder Temple. He had wanted to fight Tyrant for a long time. Today was the best opportunity. As he spoke, the black light behind the expert from Immortal Palace erupted again. His aura also continuously rose. Tyrant was not to be outdone. The sound of Buddhist scriptures in the world increased again. At the same time, the Buddha's shadow behind him also became more and more powerful. Who would have thought that a fat monk who didn't seem to have any outstanding features would have such strength? Seeing Tyrant and the expert from Immortal Palace collide, Li Ku and the others did not dare to associate Tyrant with Wanshan City's flowery monk. One had to know that in Wanshan City, Tyrant was the one who hugged beauties. He looked like a monk who drank meat and drank wine. It was hard to imagine that such a monk could cultivate Buddhist techniques to such a level. However, Tyrant clearly did not know what Li Ku and the others were thinking. Even if he knew, with Tyrant's personality, he would probably say something like, "Wine and meat pass through the intestines, Buddha stays in the heart. If I don't enter hell, who will?" It was too terrifying. This kind of battle was unforgettable for everyone present. At this moment, the golden light around Tyrant seemed to have become a second sun between heaven and earth, illuminating all things. There was still no clear victor. Tyrant and the expert from Immortal Palace were both progenitor realm experts. Their strength was on par with each other. It would not be easy to determine the victor. However, at this moment, without any warning, a cyan light appeared out of nowhere. The entire sky was directly split by this sword. It was as if the sky was split into two and completely split apart. The sky is splitting apart. Such a peerless sword strike made even a sword cultivator like Li Ku gasp in amazement. There was actually someone in this world who could slash out such a sword strike. The cyan light slowed down and fiercely struck between the golden palm and the black fist. Tyrant and Immortal Palace's experts, who were originally on par with each other, immediately stopped fighting when this sword strike appeared. Then, a young man wearing a long robe embroidered with white clouds appeared on the battlefield. The man was very ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. He only held an extremely ordinary sword in his hand, which also did not have anything special about it. However, with the appearance of the young man, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a strange glint. Xiao Chen did not deny that Tyrant was very strong. However, in any case, the path that Tyrant walked was different from Xiao Chen's. However, this young man was different. Like Xiao Chen, he was also a sword cultivator. Moreover, judging from the sword strike just now, Xiao Chen had to admit that this young man's strength was far above his own. Even his comprehension of the sword Dao was far above his. Putting aside the cultivation, this was the first time Xiao Chen met someone whose comprehension of the sword Dao was higher than his. At this moment, the young man stood there like a sharp jianyi that had yet to be unsheathed. His entire body was like a sword. Xiao Chen looked at the young man with a strange expression. At this time, Tyrant also said to the young man in a bad mood, "Qin Feng, are you crazy? You want to cut down your own people?" Clearly, Tyrant was very dissatisfied with Qin Feng's sudden attack. If he had not stopped in time, Qin Feng's sword strike would have landed on Tyrant and that expert from Immortal Palace. Begging collection, begging monthly votes, begging recommendation. Chapter 2435. Monk grumbled unhappily. Qin Feng didn't care about that at all. He was the same as Monk, one of the 9 palace masters of the 9 palaces above the clouds. He was also an ancestor expert. Moreover, Qin Feng was in charge of the Sword Palace within the 9 palaces above the clouds. Monk grumbled unhappily. Qin Feng didn't care about that at all. He was the same as Monk, one of the 9 palace masters of the 9 palaces above the clouds. He was also an ancestor expert. Moreover, Qin Feng was in charge of the Sword Palace within the 9 palaces above the clouds. Not caring about Monk's curses at all, Qin Feng directly locked his gaze onto the 2 immoral palace experts. With an extremely indifferent expression, he said, "Both of you, stop." "Humph, do we have to stop just because you say so?" Hearing that, one of them coldly snorted. It was true that Qin Feng's strength wasn't weak, and could even be said to be very strong. His sword Dao was simply omnipresent. However, so what? Qin Feng was also an ancestor expert like them. The 2 of them naturally wouldn't listen to Qin Feng. Facing the cold snort from the immoral palace expert, Qin Feng didn't care at all. He slightly shook his head and said, "This is the order of your immoral palace's palace master. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not." After speaking, he didn't want to pay attention to the 2 of them anymore. As for the 2 who originally wanted to berate Qin Feng, when they heard that it was an order from their palace master, they immediately stopped. They could look down on Qin Feng, but they didn't dare to disobey their palace master. They could only coldly snort to express the dissatisfaction in their hearts. Seeing that, Monk on the side laughed in schadenfreude. "Ha, you 2 cowards. Why are you scared? If you have the ability, then come and fight your Grandpa Buddha for another 300 rounds. Monk didn't hide his ridicule at all. Towards that, the 2 immoral palace experts were furious. However, they forcefully endured their anger and didn't attack again. Seeing that, Monk smiled even more brightly. However, just as Monk was rejoicing in their misfortune, Qin Feng continued, "Palace Master wants the 2 of you to return. He even said that you shouldn't disgrace yourself outside." Qin Feng's words caused Monk's smile to immediately stiffen. Then, he fiercely glared at Qin Feng. His appearance was clearly saying, "You brat, you really don't know how to speak." But since Qin Feng said so, Tyrant naturally couldn't attack anymore. It was just that the matter wasn't settled yet. Although he couldn't attack anymore, Tyrant still looked at the 7 old ancestors of Lin country and said, "Your country of Lin has provoked me time and time again. Shouldn't you give me an explanation?" Tyrant didn't care about Lin country's repeated provocations. However, he would definitely demand an explanation from the royal family of Lin country. Hearing Tyrant's words, the 7 old ancestors of Lin country were stunned. Then, their faces turned extremely ugly. They already knew that those 2 were Immortal Palace's experts. Immortal Palace was the overlord of the entire primordial world. Compared to Immortal Palace, Lingua couldn't even be counted as a strand of leg hair. Meanwhile, the monk and the others didn't even fear Immortal Palace, let alone their country of Lin. A power that even Immortal Palace attached great importance to, how could their country of Lin compare? By now, the 7 old masters finally understood what kind of trouble the emperor of the Lin country had caused for the Lin country. It was practically on the brink of destruction. In the eyes of experts at Tyrant's level, a small country of Lin was as weak as an ant. If they wanted to destroy it, it was just a matter of a word. Give an explanation? Hearing Tyrant's words, the 7 old ancestors didn't know what to do. What kind of explanation could the country of Lin give? Or rather, what did the country of Lin have that could catch their eyes? The 7 of them stood rooted to the ground nervously. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Seeing this, Tyrant said snappily, "Forget it. Let the emperor of Lin country take his own life. It's useless to keep such an idiot alive." It could be said that Tyrant was being magnanimous. He didn't vent his anger on the royal family of Lin country and only let the emperor take his own life. This kind of punishment was already enough for the royal family of Lin country. Although as the emperor, taking his own life was indeed shameful, what else could he do? Even if the other party destroyed the entire country of Lin, he wouldn't have the slightest bit of temper, let alone letting the emperor take his own life. Hearing Tyrant's words, the 7 old ancestors' hearts sank. However, they still cupped their hands respectfully and said, "Junior understands." After settling the matter of the country of Lin, Tyrant and Daoist once again came before Xiaochen. At this time, Tyrant also introduced him to Qin Feng enthusiastically. "Qin Feng, this is Brother Xiaochen. He's a pretty good person. Where did he come from?" "Brother Xiaochen, what world did you come from?" "The Great Thousand World." "Oh, right. Look at my memory. The Great Thousand World. I plan to bring them to see the Palace Master. I can also talk to that old thing from Immortal Palace to see if he can open the black hole and let them return first. Brother Xiaochen seems to have something to do in the Great Thousand World." Tyrant introduced everyone to each other. Of course, Tyrant also introduced Qin Feng to Xiaochen and the others. After hearing Tyrant's words, Qin Feng also looked at Xiaochen curiously. "The Great Thousand World? Is it a small world?" He had never heard of this place. But if it was just a small world, Qin Feng wasn't that interested. In this regard, before Xiaochen could reply, Tyrant spoke first. "Look at your uncultured face. How can it be a small world? Let me tell you, the small world that Brother Xiaochen and the others are in is a genuine universe. It's the same as our great world and the primordial world." A universe? Upon hearing this, Qin Feng's interest was immediately piqued. They were already invincible in the great world, which was why they followed their palace master to the primordial world. They were a group of people who couldn't stand loneliness. Now that they heard about a new universe, Qin Feng was naturally interested. He looked at Xiaochen with a hint of anticipation and said, "Oh, I wonder if there's a world lord in the Great Thousand World now. Who is the strongest force? If you have time, you can talk to the Palace Master and head to the Great Thousand World to take a look." The Cloud Palace didn't have any intention of invading other universes because the higher-ups of the Cloud Palace were all people who couldn't stand loneliness. After staying in the Great World for a long time, it was inevitable that they would feel bored. To put it bluntly, they came out to have fun. The only difference was that the people of the Cloud Palace traveled the Great Thousand World while the people of the Cloud Palace traveled the Great Thousand World. To put it bluntly, the people of the Cloud Palace traveling the Great Thousand World were like ordinary people traveling to and from major cities. After all, the height one stood at was different and the world one saw was different. The people of the Cloud Palace saw the Great Thousand World while ordinary people only saw cities. Seeing that Qin Feng had developed a strong interest in the Great Thousand World, Xiaochen didn't know what to say. After all, the Great Thousand World couldn't be compared to the Primordial World and the Great Thousand World. However, before Xiaochen could speak, Tyrant interrupted him. Okay, we'll talk about these things later. Let's go and see the Palace Master. Brother Xiaochen, come with us." Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.